Okay, good morning. Thank you very much. For those in attendance, welcome to the La Plata Electric Association June board meeting. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, and if everybody would take a moment and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to
the
flag
of
the United States of America
and to the
republic
for
which it stands,
one nation,
God,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can we go ahead and get a approval for the agenda, or I believe we have a modification with the agenda. Let's go ahead and if somebody could offer that modification.
I move to amend the agenda so that executive session includes a discussion with our legal counsel, a discussion around a confidential business matter. Oh, what was the third one? And discussion around San Luis Valley.
Nope, sorry, Rachel. Sorry. Yeah,
It's a location, not a thing.
It is, but the third matter was actually that our confidential statement by our tri-state director, right? I think that covers. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstained? Okay, thank you. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and open the floor for member comments. Do we have anybody in attendance today? Okay, let's go ahead and move on then. If there are no member comments, no hands today, then we'll go ahead and close member comments. And then move to the consent board items. Does anybody have any items in the consent package that they would like to pull out for individual discussion? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'd like to pull the minutes out. I think there needs to be some clarification, amendment maybe to the minutes on the director elections to make it more clear.
Terrific. Okay, no problem. Holly, go ahead.
I would also like to pull out E, director travel and training requests, please.
You bet. No problem. So can we get a motion to pass the consent board items absent director expenditures and board minutes?
So moved.
Can you give a second?
Rachel,
Second by Kohler.
Kohler, thank you. All in favor? Hold your hands up.
Aye.
Say aye. Thank you.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? Thank you. Okay, consent items passed. Let's go ahead and tackle board minutes. Dan, why don't you go ahead and what did you see in the board minutes?
Well, we have, let me get there. We have the executive officer nominees, and there's only one per office except for treasurer. But down in the votes, we have 11-1 for president. Vice president 11-1. See what I'm getting at? That the not a unanimous vote for each one. If we were doing this in person, we would be one nominee would be a motion would be made to elect that director by acclamation. So we either need to add that those votes for the non-nominees are write-in votes, or name the votes that were not for the nominee, the person that was voted for. To make it more clear, somebody reading the minutes, they would wonder what was going on with that election, in my opinion.
Well, may I speak?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Please go ahead, Tim.
So Dan, I mean, if there's only one candidate, somebody can still vote against that candidate. That doesn't mean that it has to be done by unanimous vote.
No, I agree there.
So
But
I'm
we
not
need to
quite,
add the
I'm-
clause that those were write-in votes.
well, no, you can still, if there's one candidate, you can still vote against them. It doesn't mean you have to vote for somebody else. I guess.
Okay, if everybody understands it, it doesn't, it's not real clear to me, but
Yeah, maybe I'm not understanding either. Graham probably has, I mean, you're the one that recorded the votes, so.
Yeah, so I mean, you are correct, Tim, that if we had sort of a non-formatted ballot, right? If you guys recall from last month, we had the digital ballot, so people could select, you know, whichever candidate, even though only one candidate was nominated for 3 of the 4 executive offices, any director had the opportunity to vote for any other director or themselves, regardless of who was nominated, to account for write-in ballots if anybody wanted to. I will say that Tim is also right in a sort of normal, in a non-digital sense, that I have seen people just write in not the one nominated person, right? Or anybody but the nominated person, or what, you know, sort of, you know, where it wasn't for a write-in candidate, it was just not supporting the sole nominee. So, I mean, that could be reflected in this as well. To me, and I talked to Dan about this, I mean, I think this is a good question. When we crafted these minutes, we sort of followed our previous format and our sort of general rule that we reflect what was done, not what was said. And so each person who was nominated through an official kind of nominating process. Somebody stood up and stated the names of the nominees and they were accepted and stuff like that. And then the votes were also the official votes, but we didn't really necessarily, I believe I announced who received what number of votes, but you know, so I could reflect that if that's the will of the board. You know, it's not a problem to, I mean, it's not like confidential information that can't be disclosed, but just to explain how I got us to this point was, you know, because these were write-in candidates, it didn't seem to me to rise quite to the level of a formal nomination to include them. But if the board wants them included, it shouldn't be a problem.
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, you know, where Dan sees it as confusing, and I think we all kind of understand how the process went. And I would just make the suggestion that we could really just add a very short piece at the end of the paragraph above executive officer nominees, and we could indicate where Graham talks about having the secret ballot. We could just say that all director names were included on the ballot. And I think that would be enough for a reader to conclude that sort of in the 11-to-1 case, 11 people voted for the person that was nominated and 1 person voted for anyone else on that ballot, which includes all board members. So that would just be a really minor modification to describe that the secret ballots contained all directors' names. So I'll go ahead and move that we add that language at the end of that election of officers paragraph, that it just say that secret ballots contained all directors' names.
I'll second that.
Okay, let's open the floor for discussion. Give Kirsten her comment. Kirsten, did you have a comment?
No, I got my hand down as soon as that motion went up.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, all in favor of the motion, hold your hand up and say aye. All opposed?
All right.
All abstained? Great. Thank you. The motion carries. Okay, thank you. Thanks for doing that clarification. On to director expenses, or excuse me, board of director expenditures. Holly?
Hey, John,
Yes.
I think we approved the amendment, but do we not have to now approve the minutes as with the amendment? I think we need one more vote.
Okay. Yeah, let's just tackle that for clarity. All in favor of the approving the board meeting minutes as amended?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? Great, thank you. That motion carries. Okay, Holly, why don't you take the lead on this?
Great, thank you, sir. It was the travel and training requests that I wanted to pull just for clarification. And so when I first started at LPEA, our travel and training request budget was a little bit more than it is now. And when COVID hit, we did reduce it. And I totally respect that. And I have no problem contributing to the health and welfare of the membership in the organization. I also am a great believer in cooperative principle number 5, training, education, and information for all. So there's a couple of events that are coming up that I would respectfully request permission to attend. The first one being towards the end of July, they have an NREL microgrid research and development and a strategy symposium going on in Golden. And so I would like to attend that. I have already downloaded the 7 white papers. I don't know if you can see them because they're disappearing, but it's going to require a tremendous amount of research on my part to, take a good look at this, but I want to do it because at the risk of sounding conceited, I can definitely understand where we're going with microgrids and how important this is to the future of the electric industry. And so for my own educational purposes, I would like to attend that. It fits within my budget. I've got $3,050 left. So the second piece is more or less a wish list, because ever since I became on the board, I wanted to look at going to that Gettysburg experience in Pennsylvania. I have heard nothing but great things. I'm a history buff. My oldest son would like to be a history professor. That's what he's going to school for right now. Unfortunately, that training right there is $3,050. So I don't know if there's any precedence in any, I know that some of y'all don't spend any of your training budget every year. And so I don't know if there's any help or assistance, or even if it's out of line to even ask. But I would like to just throw out for consideration of maybe some assistance, if it's possible, on helping pay for that second wish list item. Kirsten?
Kirsten, go ahead.
So a couple things. One, that DOE one is great. You'll meet a lot of people there. Whenever they do their peer reviews, it's like a fire hose of information. So I'm going to try to be up there, but it's just because I'm going to be in town. So hopefully we'll see you there. As far as the Gettysburg experience, I know a lot of people kind of think of, well, who cares about history? This is about LPEA. So take a minute and defend this from what does this do for you as an LPEA director, and how does this make you better?
Well, I can tell you absolutely with full clarity that when under our original budget was what allowed me to go to Branson, Missouri for the summer director school. And there I met tons and tons of rural electric cooperative directors from across the entire country. And that was a truly eye-opening experience. Not only did I understand the basics of leadership at rural electric cooperatives and how they operated and what was important and whatnot, it also helped me personally understand, this is going to sound a little crazy, but out of the whole thing, one of the biggest pieces of knowledge that I gained from this was I'm going to have to learn how to speak up. And I actually am quite terrified to do so. So that in itself has been a personal journey, and I'm learning every day. And if I didn't ask today, it'd be a big fat no now, wouldn't it?
It was. So I appreciate that, and that it's the leadership part of the Gettysburg that I have heard is so fabulous. And I think as we grow our board members, and if you have aspirations within the board, or even just with it in the community or with the CREA, as far as leadership roles, go for it. And additionally, even if you don't have those aspirations, we're all leaders on this board, and I appreciate that. And if I can move some over from my line, if people let me do that, I'll give you some of my funds, no problem. We'll just figure out the semantics of it, or the.
Thank you. Rachel?
Yeah, I know in the past the budgets have been these like rough guidelines. That has been at least how I was. Maybe things have shifted, but I know when I came on it, people had similar questions, and it all just kind of washed out in the end for the reasons you mentioned earlier. But I appreciate the ask. I guess one question I do have is it $3,050 just for? Is that all in, or is that you've also got to get your plane ticket and your housing and et cetera, et cetera?
That is just the registration fee.
Okay.
I was looking at Priceline at flights and hotels, and it looks like that's going to be in the 1,000 if you stay in the hotel that NRECA is recommending. It jumps up to about 1,500.
Joe, go ahead.
Just a couple things. What was I can't remember what the budget was, more like 5,000 previously. Anybody remember?
If I remember correctly, it was a little more than that.
It was
Yeah, it was 7,200 or something.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at our, our board of directors budget, and we're 176,000 under expenditures for the year for our budget. So it seems like we do have some room in there to do something for Holly. And it seems that it could come out of there instead of, because I mean, $3,200 anymore isn't going very far. So I'm just wondering, is it possible to use some of that money that's in the in our budget to offset something like this?
So maybe Carl can give you guys some facts and data. Carl, can you please talk
Sure.
about what's been spent, what's been unspent? There is a budget, we have to stay in it. It's not a guideline, just because we expect that of our staff as well. So Carl, can you kind of walk through, because it looks like you guys definitely have, like Joe said, a lot of money that has been unspent thus far.
Yes. Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, so each director is allocated $3,250 for what we call discretionary conferences and training. I believe that previous allocation was for everything. But that was before my time, so I cannot speak with great authority on that. But I know since 2020, we've separated them for things you have to go to and things that are more like what Holly's talking about now. So overall, for all 12 directors, there is a budget of $39,000 for discretionary conferences and training. My my take on this, and Jessica, correct me if you see this differently, is although we've allocated that to each director, if the 12 of you agree that that pot could be allocated differently, then that's perfectly fine, as long as it stays within that $39,000. And I can tell you right now, as you probably saw in just the review of the past rather than the request for the future, only $200 of that pot has been spent thus far. So it really is up to you guys if you want to do this. There is the budget there. But if you have a rush in October and November, maybe it impacts you then. So that would be my take on that.
So
I'd be
does
more than
the-
happy to forego my per diem on all that, you know, just because I do value the educational. I just don't want to go in the hole to do it so far.
Well, Carl, if so, the 176,000. So that includes, I guess, what is that? What else? If we've only got $40,000 in discretionary, but we have 176,000 total. I guess what's the? I'm not understanding what the difference is there.
So the main thing is your mandatory meetings. So like today, committee meetings, if you have to go to CREA, roundup, all of those kind of things. And that's where all the real spending has been so far this year, about 83,000. So it's really the per diems and the cost, the monthly stipends are the big items there. We do have some smaller items for insurance and so forth, and they're not very much at all, about $500.
Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, first off, on the decrease in the budget, it always was, the mandatory meetings always were separate from the discretionary, even back previous to 2020. And the board, when I was the chair, we all took a big hit in the spirit of when margins got really thin. We thought we really needed to take the lead on that, or at least strongly participate in cutting our expenses, to participate in shoring up the margin gaps that we had. So this year we have this budget. I'll just answer in two ways. One, I'm happy to give Holly my money. I'm not sure I'm going anywhere this year. I'd like to next year, but I'm happy to give Holly my chunk, $3,000, so whatever, to be able to do that. But I think as we get into the budget cycle this coming year, those budgets are now out of date. Inflation has hit. We did serious belt tightening. I'm not sure that's quite, we may not need to go back to $7,000, but we probably ought to bump that up. We ought to consider that for 2023 when we do budget next year. And because we don't do, also aren't doing in-person meetings, I'm not sure when we're going back to that, but we're saving a lot of that money that was designated for everything else that happened there. So I don't see any way to not kind of cover Holly's expenses there. And as we maybe get back to live meetings, I'm not sure what the plan is on that, but we'll use some of that money. But we're already halfway through the year, and we've saved a good chunk. So we're going to come in well under the grand total, and without getting too confused, help solve Holly's problem now. Next year we should raise that discretionary money to be closer to what it was in the past, my opinion.
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. That's good clarification, as well as from Carl. And, I'd make a motion that we allow Holly to overspend for these two courses in her own allocated $3,250, and proportionally the rest of us reduce ours. If somebody needs some later, we could do the same thing, but I'm pretty certain I won't spend that $3,250 this year. Like Bob, I can anticipate next February at the CREA meeting and stuff like that, things that I might want to do, but most of the that activity is passed already this year for me. So I would just suggest, make the motion. Allow her to overspend. We all proportionally reduce. If someone needs it again, we can do the same thing until that 39,000 budget is approached.
I'll second the motion.
So let me just hit the pause button here. That seems like the right way to tackle this to me, because we're not taking money from staff or other pre-approved budgets and ignoring this sort of the process here for a second. Graham or Carl or even Jessica, is this sort of a fair ball here, or are we getting outside the lines?
Thanks for asking, John. Yeah, so as Carl mentioned, the budget that we develop with you in coordination is set. And so, yeah, if you want to move money around the line items within your budget, that's completely appropriate. It's when you guys go over budget and need additional money, that's when we have to take money from other people's operational budgets, which is an impact. And so that's when we get into trouble. We think this is completely appropriate and within the guidelines and the policies.
Okay, so then let's finish this motion. Okay, great, thank you. And then maybe, since this is sort of a
is there a second?
Let's go ahead.
I seconded it.
Bob seconded.
Yeah, he seconded it. Let's finish the discussion, and then I have a closing comment. Ted, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just as clarification, Tim, on your motion, there was no defined limit to that. That concerns me just a little bit. You know, I'd like to allow that to happen, but I wouldn't like to make it understood that Holly could presumably turn in an expense report for $35,000 because that's in the budget. You know, it could we limit the could we know what this number is and approve that, or could we limit it to a certain maximum amount?
Well, I referenced the 2 courses that she brought up.
Yeah, so you want to clarify, what was it, not to exceed, what was it, $3,500? Or what was
All told, I'm like estimating it's about 5,500, but I have $3,000 of my own budget left.
Okay, so let's just put a big round number of 3,000 additional dollars on it. Maybe you want to, Tim, you want to modify that so you can just put an upper bound on it for clarity.
All right, so I move that Holly be given an additional allocation to her discretionary travel budget of 3,000.
At the expense.
That will be proportionately reducing the other directors' discretionary budget, not to exceed our total. And if other directors need that additional later, we could affect the same kind of mechanism.
Okay, terrific. Okay,
Now, probably need a second on that as well.
Yeah, so I seconded it, and
Put this
I'm
one
fine with that.
Yep, all right. All in favor? Okay.
Got a
so
question.
Hang on, question, Kirsten.
Yeah, I think you're cutting it a little tight because of airfares. I think you should make it 4,000. I would, let's see, we're in discussion now, right? So I don't know if I vote no here or suggest an amendment to the amendment. I need some help.
I
Yeah,
think, I mean,
let's bump it up. Just, it makes sense.
All right, I withdraw the motion, add a new motion. Exactly like the previous one, except it's 4,000, not to exceed 4,000. I feel like I'm in an auction or something.
Sold.
There we go. Second. All right, all in favor, as hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? All abstained? Terrific.
Abstain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion
I
carries.
really sincerely appreciate this discussion, and I will write you great reports on it.
Excellent. Thank you. Just as a closing comment, sort of outside the scope of this conversation, perhaps the FAC or the policy pack might consider creating a very simple, lightweight process that this can be done down in committee, so that when it pops up, if we need to move our own budgets around, it's sort of done and we're in and out in a minute, since it's a sort of ministerial by the time it bumps up here and we're not doing it in real time. Something that a possible a suggestion as a way to make sure that future changes like this are smooth and not time consuming and not being asked to be done on the fly. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. And I know when Karis was here, there was some sort of, it was a form and the full budget was presented, something, so it might even be in the records.
Yeah. So if somebody down in one of those committees could figure that out, that'd be great. Being able to do this should be a routine matter. So let's, but that's my personal opinion, not driving a change here. So let's push on.
Hey, John.
Yes.
It's for me, it's very hard to hear you. I don't know if you're far away from your microphone or it's just.
Is that true? Oh.
You're very light spoken today. So
count your blessings.
Thank you.
How's that?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's push on. CEO staff and reports. Jessica.
Okay, I will try to share my screen. Sorry, Drew has been trying to help me through the best way to share it, and I'm probably going to mess it up again. Okay, can everybody see this? Hopefully that's a yes. Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. Okay, we're going to move to the front picture. Oh, I do want to mention one of our staffers, John, ran up, I'm not exactly sure where this was, but took a picture. This was the Parent Peak fire. We had crews go up. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but they went up one of the trails back here to go see if the fire was getting close to some of our poles. And if they were, they would go out and wrap them. So kind of interesting. I don't know if many folks know that we have a lot of crews that are dispatched during every wildfire that's kind of close to our infrastructure. I caught them on the way down, and it's remarkable because they have all their gear on, and they're hiking up in the hills because a lot of our poles are outside of roads. So it's pretty amazing that these guys are, doing this work for our communities. So pretty proud of them. Okay, key performance indicators. So we've got a few yellow marks that we're watching, and a lot of this is just due to the past storms we've had. But I'm going to have Jerry explain those three just a little bit more. So Jerry, can you talk about those three?
Yeah, since these are year-to-date goals, they're only looking at January to present. And as I mentioned last month, those numbers were starting to come down from the winter storms that really started us off with a very high average. But the past month, they ramped back up a touch because we had to shut off power over in Pagosa for the Plumtah fire, and it raised those averages up. But hopefully the fire season gets under control and people are responsible and we don't have to kill power to members, and our numbers continue to come down.
Thanks, Jerry. These also, Carl, am I correct? These also reflect the new goals on here that the FAC and that the board has passed. So you'll see those reflected.
That's right, Jessica. I will also mention that these are the April numbers, just because of the way the meetings fell so early in the month. But if it was May, they would all be ticks too. So.
Right. Thank you. Tim, did you have a question on this?
Yeah, thanks. So these reliability metrics that were exceeded or didn't meet the goal, Is that, remind me, I always get confused on this, I apologize, but is the fire an MED or a non-MED? How did that factor into this statistic, Jerry?
So the MEDs go off of time and number of members. And so the Plume Top fire, it was a limited number of members. It was just one subdivision, but since we had to keep it off for almost a week, it really increased the duration index. And then we had to de-energize the transmission line for the Bear Dance fire. Since it affected so many members, that ended up being a major event day, which actually does not play into these numbers here.
So these numbers are exclusive of MED.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good question. All right, I'm going to move on to the next page. Every year, some of our staff do exercise activities, and this one was the Murphy Challenge. We reported on that last year. Not as many people this year. It's really actually hard to do, but these guys are wearing weighted vests and they do a number of athletic activities during the day. So it's kind of fun that staff continue to do that and stay in shape. Okay, moving on. So just a few highlights on each screen. I hope everybody can see that. I don't know if I'm cutting it off. But again, we had a good turnout for the annual meeting, lots of good comments. So thank you for the board for helping support that event. Also, I attended the Mesa Hotline School with the crews again this year. Really great what they're doing there. They're expanding the fields for education, and they have bought additional property out there. So the crews are able to get a lot of experience, hands-on experience on the transmission and distribution lines, but also on equipment that's inside of buildings. So they're starting on that effort. The other great thing about the Mesa Hotline School is that they get to meet other crews. So they actually blend the teams together. So they get to meet other crews from around the state. More states are sending their crews to the Mesa Hotline School, so it is growing. So it's a really great training opportunity there. Okay, keep moving. Don't see any hands. Okay, we did have one accident that I'll have Jerry explain. It was, again, not our staff. It was a contractor. So Jerry, do you want to explain that one?
I can let Garrett take this one. It was
Okay.
over his neck of the woods.
Yeah, so we had some tree trimmers doing some work up in the upper Blanco, and they were following a tree, and the top of the tree kind of broke loose and struck one of the workers, put a gash in his head. I think it broke his collarbone. So the guys, rushed to him. One of the guys had to go call EMS, get them up there to take care of him, get him out of there. Turns out that, and we didn't know this at the time, but the guy, his blood sugar levels were all out of whack. I don't remember the specifics, but he was, about to pass out and stuff earlier that day, but he didn't tell anybody. So he was kind of out of it when this all happened, but he's okay. They got him to the emergency room and stuff, took care of him, and luckily.
Okay, Joe, did you have a question?
Yeah, in a situation like that, I'm assuming these contractors have their own bonds, so they're paying for that, his medical care or whatever, workers' comp that we don't.
That's correct.
Okay.
Is that right?
And they have to be covered by workers' comp as part of our contracts too. So when they're independent contractors, they have to carry their own workers' compensation insurance.
Okay. And we always take these experiences as a learning opportunity. So we make sure that we understand what happened, and then we educate staff, even though we don't have employees doing tree trimming. it's still a good learning opportunity to remind people that if you're not feeling well, then you need to say something. Okay, kind of along those lines is the pole top rescue and training. Again, we're working really hard on emergency and accident training with the crews. Really working hard on fire mitigation efforts. I'm sure everybody saw we're now phase 2 in the area. If you read the information from La Plata County, it talks about, I think we're the number 7th or 9th. I don't know if Graham saw that, worst year in history for drought conditions. So we are really doing as much work as we can with our drone, what we found with our drone flyovers, to make sure we're getting that work done. So our crews are working really hard and trying to get those areas repaired so that we're not the cause of any issues in the future. Okay. All right. On this page, Sunnyside Solar, we did receive 10 letters of interest in providing a proposal for the solar project. These included 5 from Durango and 9 from within Colorado. So that was a great response. We will be working with the board on the subscription process in the future. So this is just to get information from developers on developing a site. And scholarships is pretty exciting. Thought Hillary and her team did a great job of inviting them to the annual meeting and giving those kids an opportunity to be celebrated in front of our community. Please stop me if anyone has any questions. Joe?
Yeah, on the paperless campaign, that's pretty impressive. That's over 10% of our subscribers, right? Our members. How many people are total on paperless billing? Do we have any idea?
We do. Hillary, do you have that number? Or Carl?
I can grab that. I don't have the overall right in front of me, but I know that no, I'm not going to guess because I'll probably get it wrong, but I can gather that for you and get that to you on this call.
I'm going to say it's 20,000-ish, and you can tell me I'm wrong later.
Okay.
So we still have only half of our members on paperless billing.
Yeah. And we do have members that very much need and want their paper bill.
Right.
And so we'll never be fully paperless. But when we do have these campaigns, they generally are successful in prompting people. And we always encourage that whenever members are joining as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'd just like to see that continue to be pushed around. It saves a lot of money and a lot of trucks running around carrying our mail and stuff. So that's great. And I like to see it continue.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, we were pretty excited about that. Hillary was just telling me the other day that this exceeded our expectations. So we'll continue this. Holly, did you have a question?
Yeah, in regard to it's more or less an observation. I would just like to point out the new heat pump water heater and how it's integrating with the CAMU DER platform. And this is the type of information that Dominic is presenting on July 13th at the Lunch and Learn. Is that true?
I believe so. Dan, is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's really what he's going to present on that Lunch and Learn is the progress that we've made with CAMU. And this is certainly a step of that. I don't know if we'll get too down into the details and the weeds on this, but it's more like, the voltage control and observations that we have, because this is still in the very preliminary stages. He's on the 13th, he's going to be reporting more on these are the actual deliverables that have happened. And this is still a work in progress at this point.
Okay, yeah, because I knew that you had received the first set of data points. So I've been kind of waiting to see how that turned out. Thank you.
Yeah, and then Rachel has her hand up, but I do want to have a shout out for Rachel because she's letting us do some demo work on her house. And so we really appreciate that, Rachel. It's really helpful. Did you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Just one I was curious about, or to flag maybe as a future lunch and learn would be guacamole. Oh, nope, no guacamole here. But it'd be cool to get just kind of an overview of the whole fire mitigation. Like, here's fire mitigation. We get that in snapshots, and then if a fire happens, just here's kind of how we play into that. Or if there's like a fire mitigation 101 for distribution co-op somewhere, if someone, I'd actually be really interested in kind of learning more about that. And I guess the second question was just on the paperless campaign. I had a member ask me why just a one-time reduction in costs versus, I guess they get some other companies do kind of continued reduction if you're on board with the paperless. And I think I know the answer, but I figured I'd get it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll let Hillary answer that, but you know, we looked into this across the US, like my old utility, they actually gave like a pound of coffee just one time. I think the point is that we want to create an incentive and then reduce costs for the future. And the whole point of going paperless is both to reduce our costs so that more of our money can be spent on the community at large, community events or sponsorships or programs, or even rates, go back into rates. Go into fire mitigation that touches a bigger group of people. You know, we did toss around that, you know, kind of a continuing reduction, but most co-ops and other utilities in the US don't do that for the same reason, because they say, you know, it's a one-time thing. And then the future, the point of just doing one time and not the future is that you get those savings that can go to bigger items. Hillary, do you want to add anything else to that?
That would have been exactly my answer.
Okay.
I'll jump in on that real quick, Jessica, is that you save about under $1 by going paperless per bill. And it just seemed like if you kept that going, it was just seemed too small an amount to actually acknowledge someone making a change. Whereas if you do one item, $5, yeah, to keep doing $5, we'd be spending $4 more per bill.
Awesome. Thanks for all the information. I'll relay that.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. And on the fire mitigation, I think that's a great idea, Rachel. One thing that wanted to let everybody know is that we are finalizing our fire mitigation plan. I plan to work with John Lee just to get his eyes on it once we get it kind of in the final form. It is very detailed and educational. I think you will all enjoy reading it because it combines both where our fire mitigation and our capital projects, why they're interrelated and they're important. And then a lot of the information about why we use certain electronics, like the Vipers that Dan has brought up, why those are important, and then who we work with. So it will be a confidential document just because it does show specific details on the grid. But once we're finished with that, we will do a presentation actually to the board on that point. Okay, good questions. Anything else on this? Pretty excited about our internship program too. I think this is just another effort where our staff are really thinking through how to create more sustainability within our communities. And that also means giving kids more opportunities and opening the door for them to understand what an electric cooperative is so that we can try to attract talent that's local. So we're working with our community, Fort Lewis, the other local high schools to create those intern programs. Bob, did you have a question?
Just where do we learn more about that internship program, or is there a package of information and the school can?
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, Bob. Hey, Hillary, can we send the board that information, because it would be great, since Bob, I believe you're on the school. Are you on the school board still?
Yeah, I'm the chair of the school board, matter of fact.
Yeah. Any effort that the board can do to send out, you know, ideas or just, you know, spread the word. Actually, Elizabeth would have that. She's raising her hand. So yeah, we can send that out to you.
Yeah, that would be great. I could share that and spur interest. So thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, so we'll send that over. Joe?
Yeah, I've worked with interns a lot over the course of my career, and just to throw something out. Well, first of all, question, I'm assuming these are unpaid, correct? These internships?
No, we actually, I think we put a budget in last year that was approved by the board to pay for these internships.
Okay. I know that with interns, they walk in having no clue. And a lot of times I found the interns to be a lot more trouble than helpful. So I guess my suggestion would be to get a real narrow, clear definition of what we're trying to show them with whoever employee they work with, because it can be time sucking. So
yeah, good point, Joe. Elizabeth, did you want to have a response?
Yeah, I'd love to just make a quick comment. I couldn't agree more. I've worked with a few interns myself, and they can take up a lot of time. We have 2 positions we're posting this week, and we have really engaged staff members that really are excited to work with a couple of students. There's a program through Fort Lewis College and the Economic Development Alliance. They've partnered to talk to the students at Fort Lewis College. So we're really looking to pair a really motivated student with a motivated employee, and hope to create future LPEA employees. So I'll send that information out to y'all today, but point taken that it can be a challenge.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Tim, did you have a question?
Yeah, don't we have a famous ex-intern on the staff?
Yes.
Several.
Like that was a success.
Yeah, we actually have a number of them at the company, Tim. Thanks for bringing that up.
Excellent.
Yeah, we do.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah,
Thanks.
appreciate it. Okay, thank you. All right. By the way, I don't know if anybody saw Santa Rita Park. We sponsored this, which I thought was wonderful, setting out the flag. So it was a really very nice
It was
effort.
beautifully done.
It was
beautifully done.
Okay, any further questions? John, did you have a comment?
Did I?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, great.
I had
Joe?
some snarky comments around interns, but kept them to myself. Joe, go ahead.
yeah, in the appendix on page 35 of 70, began exploring microgrid opportunities in areas that require prohibitively expensive. How is that done? Is that done by an outside contractor? Because I know we haven't done a lot with microgrids. I'm just kind of wondering, and what areas of our service territory would we be talking about, and kind of a timeline?
Joe, I'm sorry, do you have a page that's on the dashboard? Because for some reason this one is not showing the page of the board packet. It'd be on the PowerPoint in the lower right-hand corner.
Page 10.
10, okay. Dan, that would be.
Yeah, cover that.
Yeah.
Joe, thanks for asking that. I'll first address the where that we're looking at right now, and there's a section of our system south on Highway 84, south of Pagosa Springs, that is one of our most difficult, long-reaching distribution circuits that we have on our system. And on the same day, we can have high voltage and low voltage that we're trying to handle there. And the traditional solution would be about a 12 to 15 mile transmission line extension through National Forest and a new substation. So we could be looking at a $20 million project in total to do something like that. And with a lot of the classes I've attended lately, they've come a long ways on the microgrids to a point where it definitely merits some investigation. And so myself, Dominic, I really like this class that Holly's going to. She sent me some info on with NREL. There's some good possibilities out there. There's a lot of engineering behind it, but there's also funding behind it too. And that's what really particularly makes it attractive with some state grant funding that's recently come around with that. So I think there's some exciting opportunities. It is not going to happen overnight. This is a very long-term, a lot of studying to do on it. to see if it makes sense. Maybe we start small, even just with some distributed battery banks around the system that can help just from deploying that, and then later build and integrate and add more to it as time goes on, to the point where hopefully it could be even a standalone system that can reliably power that section of the grid in the event of a power outage. So it's a layered benefit. Not only is it we don't have to outlay as much capital, but now we maybe have a more resilient system to work with as well. So some exciting opportunities there.
And you're talking probably what, 3 years, something like that, or
could be. You know, we can get a little more motivated if the funding comes out and it's substantial. So maybe we can move some things along. Like I said, do a phased approach. Maybe we just look at a couple of battery systems in the area. But it's a lot of load. It's a 4 megawatt circuit, so it's not a small endeavor down there.
Yeah, this is great. I'm glad we're looking at that. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Holly, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out which report, because I submitted a couple towards the end. It was either in the leadership town hall or in the microgrid consortium that NRECA just held. But they did talk about microgrids being mentioned more than 5 times in the infrastructure bill. So this is something that there is money and funding coming down the pipeline for. And I think one of those that I attended was talking about, it's about a 5-year time frame they're expecting this stuff to play out right now.
Thanks, Holly, for that. All right, Kohler.
Yeah, so on, let's see, slide number 9 in page 3470, under the targets, that last bullet is developed a capital projects dashboard for staff. My question is, would that also be a good tool for the board to see? It looks like it's covering things that we definitely have interest in and actually take action on.
Yeah, Kohler, that is more of an operational dashboard that the staff need to use. It has somewhat confidential information, but what we had talked about as a staff is that we actually will give updates on the capital planning process on occasion, depending on the projects. And so we would bring like a dashboard like that's in the dashboard. If you saw it on that page, it shows graphs and charts. And we would bring that to the board as an update. So like the Bayfield to Pagosa line is a big one, right? So those are the kind of projects that we would definitely use, and we would pull that out of the dashboard and bring it to the board for an update.
Thank you. And is that also something that would help us during budget time to look at these projects when we're approving them?
Absolutely, Kohler. Yep. So yeah, and to your point, what we had talked about doing is doing when we start talking through the capital budget, developing the 2023 budget, we would take that data and go back to the board and show all of you the snapshot, because it's actually, I don't know how many pages of data, Dan, I don't know if you know, but it's like, it's, you know, so many projects and pages and data, and it's a big, it's a beat. What's the name of the software?
Power BI.
Power BI.
And I was going to say, it's less of a report that comes out, and more of an interactive interface, you know, so you're digging into individual projects, lots of information behind it, but it doesn't just necessarily spit out a clean report, but it lets you dig into and find where things might be going sideways and address them.
Yeah. But what we had talked about is taking all that data for the budget and bringing it to you and saying, okay, you know, a certain amount of our projects are on budget, on time, or we're underspending on capital, or we need to move this project to the future years. So we've never had this before. So we're all still trying to learn how to use it. But as you can tell from me talking a lot, it's a really exciting project. And we just need to dig into it more. And we're actually excited to show the board some of the things that come out of it.
Well, I look forward to it too, because I think your dashboards that you've developed for the other parts of the board are very, very powerful.
Great.
So thank you.
Yeah. Rachel.
Yeah, I'm on PowerPoint slide 10. And again, just goes back to my wildfire mitigation ignorance. So I saw we're replacing 2 lines. It talks about underground cable, and is underground cable inherently less susceptible to causing wildfires? And then is it also less vulnerable to damage by wildfires? I know it's very expensive, but just curious.
Yes, it is. And, you know, I think we've really been having conversations about this. Dan, what is the percent though of our network that's underground right now?
Approximately 50%.
Okay, so we're in a good spot with that right now. A lot of the areas we just you cannot underground because it's bedrock. So it's just physically impossible. But that is part of the fire mitigation plan. So it's a great point in that we're looking at high susceptible areas for wildfire. And if those are areas that we can put on more smart equipment on the lines to help us so that we can trigger the line in case of a wildfire, we can quickly shut off power in certain sections. That's what we're doing if we can't underground it. As you rightly said, undergrounding is very expensive, but staff is starting to have those conversations to say, well, is it worth it in some of these areas where if a wildfire came through, there would be high loss of life and loss of property. So those are definitely conversations we're having in the future. Okay, Dan, did you want to add any more on that one?
I was just going to say we do have a guideline for each of the capital projects, and Jerry did a great job going through the capital projects budget, pulling out a lot of the overhead rebuild projects and really questioning, it's like, hey, can we consider underground on these? And so we do have guidelines on what we're looking for. And it's not just cost, it's there's a lot of operational aspects. You don't want to, for system protection, if a line goes overhead, underground, back to overhead, back to underground, we call it porpoising, you know, coming in and out. and that doesn't create a system that can be operated very well. So we want to, you know, once underground, stay underground, working that way. So we're heading that way, and in some aspects for sure where it makes sense. But as Jessica said, the rock and stream crossings and environmental impact can be a challenge with underground as well.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, if there's no, oh, Kirsten, do you have a question?
Sorry, I'm slow on the click today. So Dan, the line extension policy, which is on the website, talks about when first choice is always underground unless there's a good reason not to be. So that's definitely the philosophy you guys take. And then there's a cost, and there's a and then what you said, either economic, ecological impact or some other reason that we can't. So you always start with the thought of, if we're putting in a new line, it's going to be underground unless we can't.
Yeah, particularly, and I think the line extension policy even says this, that if it's underground already, we're continuing underground. You know, we aren't going to come, you know, into a new subdivision and go overhead off of an underground line. Often, I mean, if you look at our new, if you watch our statistics on new line that's added, all of our new line being added is underground. Just about everything. Now we still do a lot of overhead for replacing existing stuff, but new construction is overwhelmingly underground.
Thanks, Dan. Holly?
A couple of observations. First of all, I just want to give a whoop whoop to the CSRs for signing up so many Roundup accounts. Guys, kudos to y'all. And the Smart Hub, kudos all around on that. Thank you for including those nice letters that you put in there on page 41 of 70. That is always very cool to see. And I just want to acknowledge on page 45 of 70 that we are above the target goal for our cumulative beneficial electrification sales. And so I just want to acknowledge that. And thank you all for your hard work.
Thanks, Holly. Much appreciated. All right, Rachel.
Sorry, just one more process question from another member. When someone puts in, kind of calls in that they have a tree overhanging a line, they very much got response. They were very happy with their service, but just, does it go based on kind of their number in the line, basically, when someone gets to it, or is it based on how much of a hazard it is?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jerry.
It's 100% how much a hazard it is. If somebody calls it in, it's always helpful if they can send a photo. We can tell a lot from a photograph that we've really found out with the drone pictures that we've been receiving. But we'll send our tree crews out or a serviceman to assess the tree, whether it's within our right of way, outside of our right of way, how far the overhang is, what it's going to entail to take care of the tree. And then they speak with the member and come up with a game plan if it needs to be removed. It's been happening a lot lately, especially with wildfires on everybody's mind. And, we really do encourage our members, if they have danger trees outside of our right of way, to contact us and we can assess the situation.
Awesome. I'll pass that on. Thank you.
Okay, I will pass this over to Carl for the finance report.
Thank you. Okay. Is everyone seeing that clearly? Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not getting the full screen.
It's in the notes mode, Carl.
Yeah.
Up at the top where it says display settings, you can
Yep.
monitors there.
There we go.
Top one, yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Great. Okay, so May financials. Lots of green check marks. As we discussed last month, we have somewhat altered the ranges. So it's not that we've seen significant movement since last month, but especially if you look at equity, but with us adjusting that range, we are now have the green check mark. And obviously one of the things we discussed is if we fall outside any of those ranges, that will mean action needs to be taken. So that is not the case at this point. And we will see that equity percentage dip in June and July as capital credits are retired. So some highlights for May, and these are all green again. So our operating costs were nearly $200,000 under budget. Combination of a few different items. Legal costs were the biggest one. We also didn't spend all of the money we had allocated to annual meeting because some of that was related to elections, which obviously didn't happen. We were under budget on travel, training, and meetings, and there was a small under budget on operations and maintenance this month as well, although fire mitigation once again was a focus, and that was one of the expenses that was actually over budget. So overall we were significantly under budget, but I think we were directing our dollars in the right places, I think it would be fair to say. Labor was actually almost identical. I'm perhaps being a little generous there. We were about 1% over forecast. We had the impact of the new union contract starting to be seen with those impacts. Delinquent accounts are still very low. They were slightly higher than last month, but still, as I've said before, a for-profit company would kill to have our accounts receivable book. It's very low when you look at the total. our actual electric sales, we've grown accustomed to this being orange, where it's not quite at forecast, but driven especially by industrial sales this month. We were over 6% over forecast in terms of kilowatt hours, with gross margins, sales less cost of power being about $100,000 over budget. So with a combination of that and the operating costs, we're actually $411,000 over budget for the month of May. Another factor that you will have noticed in the financial results at a glance on the first page of the long form financials is we had budgeted to increase depreciation and interest by, in our cash budget, we had forecast we would be going out to borrow in April. We did not do that. We also deferred some capital expenditure on capital items. Not so much deferred, that there was a choice, we'll do it later. In some cases with vehicles, it's just waiting. And in some cases, we kind of just guessed on when we might be able to acquire some machinery or equipment, and lead times dictated that it was later in the year. So that is really the summary for May. It's you know, it's a strong sales month. We were very prudent with our expenses. I will give you something of a preview for June. I think operating costs will be at least at forecast, possibly slightly over, as we ramp up more maintenance and fire mitigation efforts. The only caveat on whether our margins are at forecast is, I think, Dan, it would be fair to say that at the moment, industrial sales are once again looking pretty strong for June. So I would imagine gross margins will be somewhat similar, and operating costs will be higher in June. So one of the comments I made in my commentary is that you will see the gap between budgeted margin and actual margin start to shrink, especially as we are really focusing on fire mitigation over the summer and fall. That's really all I have. It's a pretty low drama financial month this month, but I will take questions. I think Kirsten was the first I saw.
Super. Thanks for that, Carl. Dan, this is probably going to be more in your bailiwick. So looking at the sales, and I get the industrials, and so that's 24-hour day probably. I'm thinking about the beginning of June being so bloody hot in the afternoons, peak time, I think. So wondering, I imagine that we're going to have a pretty big demand charge this month with Tri-State. Are you seeing that, or are we still not having enough air conditioning for the heat to matter?
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess relative. It'll be lower than what we typically would see in the winter time. Still, even with that additional industrial load on. The thing to keep in mind is that the industrial rates have a coincident peak charge. It's a very cost-based rate. And so whenever we peak, that is the demand that they are charged for that exact hour of time. And so it's very cost-based. So as they go up and down, our power bill goes up and down, and so do their revenues.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I did see another. Oh yeah, Joe.
So Dan, you're not really anticipating a big bump in like residential use for air conditioning or
right?
Any thoughts on that?
Good question, Joe. I tell you, I get concerned every time I walk through Home Depot and I see the aisles and aisles and aisles of air conditioners, and then them going out the doors there. So people are putting them in, but it hasn't been an overwhelming, addition at this point. We have air conditioning going in, solar going in that helps offset some of that as well there too. So it's real interest. We do look monthly at the graph, at the load trends for residential, commercial, and industrial. And residential and industrial, a year-over-year comparison, the profiles are laying almost right on top of each other. They're very, very similar, and industrial definitely took a jump. There was a variety of reasons. It could be temporary, just for this summer that they'll be up, but they're evaluating some cost modeling there.
Yeah, thank God for 50s during the night at night. So I guess. Thanks.
Okay, that looks like all the questions. So thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Thanks, Carl. Top notch as always. Okay. Board action agenda, Finance and Audit Committee update. How are we doing on break time? Okay, cool. Yeah, let's keep on pushing on. Finance and Audit Committee, I think that means Sue, you are driving. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll direct everybody to page 48 of your board packet. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of items there. And then we do need to discuss a policy item. So I'm going to start at the bottom of my report there. Just so everybody knows, we're going to continue the second Thursday of every month for the rest of this year for our Finance and Audit Committee meetings. And as always, y'all are always welcome to attend. We are not sure we're going to need one in July. That'll kind of depend on the rest of June's financials and if anything, kind of pops up that the committee needs to act on. Otherwise, starting in August, we will start that budget process for next year. And we'll have lots of opportunity to have the board take looks at that before we finalize it in November. There was also a brief discussion about the BDP financing, but basically that's being tabled until we find out more from FERC. So there's really not much to update everybody on there. And then we are going to talk about the policy 201, which is on your next page, page 49 of the packet. And it's really nice having Ted on the Finance and Audit Committee board committee as well, because we were able to kind of talk about this. And Ted, do you want to hop in here and kind of tell what the policy committee did, and then we can go back and forth?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Sue. I think hopefully everyone remembers last month we went through the changes to the financial goals, and we kind of had a motion and approval, and the outcome there was that we should memorialize that in the proper place, which is policy 201. There was some thought process or maybe expectation that would run through the Committee on Policies. Graham brought the modified language up to me, and we discussed that it really just didn't make sense for a Committee on Policies to meet, for the policy, for the committee members' time, and then of course the expense involved in that, just to have this very brief discussion. So I just did a straw poll with sort of offline with the Committee on Policies, and we unanimously agreed that it was appropriate and reasonable to run this through Finance and Audit Committee. We didn't discuss in detail whether this was the right language or the way to do it. We just said that Finance and Audit Committee would have that discussion and then present it to the board. So I think that's all I really have to report there. That we really did think that this was the appropriate procedure to happen. So thank you, Sue.
Yeah, thank you, Ted. So back at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, you'll see from this draft revision of the policy, we have included the new percentages that we talked about last month and voted on. The only thing we really need to address and vote on this month is item D, which is an addition.
Sue, do you want me to share my screen so I can put that up for everyone to see?
Sure. Thank you very much, Graham. That would be great. And I'm hopping here as well.
Can everybody see this all right? Big enough for everyone? Good.
Perfect. So yes, if you want to scroll down to item D, this would be a new addition to this policy. And I personally like that. I would think or hope that most of the board members will as well, that the co-op shall not borrow money for the purpose of retiring capital credits. And to the Finance and Audit Committee, that just seemed to make common sense. But we wanted to present this back to you as the board for approval of this policy. Kirsten, do you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I do, and I voiced concern before about borrowing money, because when does this mean anytime we borrow money in a year to like pay for fire mitigation that we can't then retire capital because we borrowed money that year?
I mean, I don't think that's the intent of this language. It seems to me that you can't borrow money for the purpose of retiring capital. So if you borrow it for an alternative purpose, like, purpose of retiring capital credits, but like borrow money for capital improvements, things of that nature.
So would the word sole work perhaps for the sole purpose of retiring capital credits? I'm concerned that any year we borrow money, because it all goes into one pool, whether we get it from rates or whether we get it from borrowing, it's all one pool of money. So what we're saying here is you can't, if you borrow money, you can't retire capital. For the sole purpose, could I make a motion to add the word sole before the word purpose in D, so that the line will read, the cooperative shall not borrow money for the sole purpose of retiring capital credits?
Okay, thank you, Kirsten. Tim, did you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I mean, Kirsten, we've discussed this at the FAC on more than one occasion. And yeah, I don't think sole purpose makes any real significant difference here. I don't think it's necessary. If you borrow money to put towards capital improvements, that shows up very differently on the financials than if you're borrowing it for operation. And frankly, what I had suggested in this is that we don't borrow money for the operation of the co-op in terms of distribution expenses on a yearly basis. This was then pared down to purpose of retiring capital credits, for which I'm okay. But slicing and dicing this, I don't think really improves it at all. So I'll just tell you, I don't think that's necessary. It's pretty clear, I think, to anybody that we're not going to borrow money if we pass this to retire capital credits. We would need to show a margin in that year that can afford, so that we can afford to do so, not borrow to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Oh, we can't hear you. Try it again.
I think showing the margin works great. I think that's really what you're after, right? Is we have to have made a profit in the year, and our cash also has to be right. Because the only reason we would borrow money, perhaps when we have positive margins, is if we have lousy cash flow. Because you could theoretically have great margins, and lousy cash flows. And yes, we have talked about this before, and every time I'm sort of like, oh, I really don't like this because of the joining of borrowing. We don't segregate borrowing, Carl. You don't do you mark borrowing and say, okay, yeah, we're borrowing this and we're going to put this in this own little line item here? Or maybe you do and I'm all wet.
Well, one thing I would mention, Kirsten, is our Power Vision loan facility actually states that you can't use it for anything other than capital projects. But you would also be right that no, I don't segregate cash in different accounts for different things.
Okay. Dan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm wondering if our capital credit policy includes this in there some way, somehow, and shouldn't be in this policy, should be in the capital credit policy.
Ted, do you have
Let me look at that, Dan. I'll get you an answer to what's it.
Okay. Thanks, Graham. In the meantime, Kirsten does have a motion on the table. Does anybody want to second it, or do we want to wait for Graham to come back?
Can you repeat the motion? I guess I didn't hear that.
Okay. Go ahead, Kirsten.
I move that we modify item D, adding the word sole before purpose, so that the line will now read, the cooperative shall not borrow money for the sole purpose of retiring capital credits.
And we're waiting to see what Graham comes up with.
So policy 205 says that the board shall review the economic ability and the financial goals of the cooperative to retire equity prior to retiring any and all capital credits. The accumulative, sorry, that's G&T capital. And so that's basically, I'd say, I mean, that we have the board, sorry, the bylaws state, pull that up as well. The bylaws state that if any time prior to dissolution or liquidation, the board of directors shall determine that the financial condition will not be impaired thereby, the capital then credited to the members' accounts may be retired in full or in part, provided, however, that such retirement or partial retirement shall not be contrary to mortgages issued or to be issued by the cooperative.
Okay.
So those are our current policies on that.
So it sounds like this policy 205 really doesn't have this statement in it either. Kirsten, did you have another comment?
Graham, I thought I heard you say that you have to refer to this.
I'm sorry, you sort of faded out.
I think you just said you have to refer to the financial policies. And this is, so
yes,
this is the only place.
That is.
Okay, so this
the
would be
board
the one
shall
place
review the economic ability and financial goals. And so policy 201 is the financial goals. So.
Okay, so this is where it needs to be. We do have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Rachel, now further discussion. Did you have something else to comment on, Rachel?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Kohler?
Yeah, I think adding sole to me can actually backfire on what your intent is, Kirsten. So the cooperative shall not borrow money for the sole purpose of retiring capital credit. So maybe the purpose is part for retiring and part for something else. I think it could backfire with the word sole in there. I prefer it without sole. Just a thought.
Hey, Kirsten?
Well, Hansel, thank you for that point, Kohler.
Okay, Ted.
Yeah, just supporting Kohler's comment there. I won't support this motion. I think we should go back to the way it was originally worded.
Okay. Any further discussion before we vote on this amendment? Okay, I don't know, I can't see who's voting what.
Let me stop sharing while we vote.
Okay,
Make it
all right,
easier.
thank you. Okay, all those in favor of
The role of the chair, the president of the board, to call for vote.
probably. Sure.
Okay, I'll take it. So all in, so all in favor. Hold your hand up and say aye. And hold it up for a
Aye.
second, please.
I'm seeing two, Kirsten and Rachel.
Okay. All opposed? I saw John Lee's hand up under opposed, I believe. All abstained? Okay. Okay. Okay, so that motion failed to carry. Returning to the main line of conversation, before I hand it back to Sue, Tim, why don't you go ahead and take the question or the comment, please? Sorry.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the original wording in the draft changes to policy 201 for item D.
Okay, can we get a
Second by
second?
Kohler.
Kohler.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye.
Aye.
The last one is
Aye.
disputed, please hold it, leave your hand up for a second, please, so that we can do a full count. John Lee, can you flash your screen so we can see you? Okay, all opposed? All abstained? Okay.
I didn't notice anything from John.
I didn't. I think he had to step. I saw. I think so. I saw him on a phone. Oh no, he's back.
So.
Sounds like an abstention.
At this point, I would consider it an abstention.
Okay. That's fine. Okay. All right. Onwards. So did you have additional matters to cover?
No, that's everything we had. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Good. That brings us to the break. A couple minutes behind, but let's go ahead and take a full 10-minute break. We will see you at 10:46 p.m. to resume. Thank you. Dan, did you have a comment, or you want to pick it up when we come back?
Did we need to vote approve this 201 as amended?
Tim's motion was to approve it as originally presented without the amendment. So Kirsten moved to approve it with her suggested amendment of Sol, and that failed. And then Tim moved to approve it as originally presented, and I believe that was seconded by Kohler and approved.
With all the other changes to the financial deals.
Yes, and just sort of for the record, as Sue discussed, those were all the financial goals numbers themselves were approved last month. So that was sort of just a writing exercise to sort of update that. The consideration of those as numbers already occurred last month.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Still 10:36. We'll see you in 9 minutes. Okay, let's get back to it. Okay. Board action agenda. County Fair delegate. And fair budget. Who is driving this?
Well, we need, so Hillary submitted a memo and we combined it semi with another memo, but yes, we need to have a fair delegate for the La Plata, one for La Plata and one for Archuleta. Please.
Yeah, and hopefully everything that you need to know about what is involved in being a fair representative is included in that memo. And just as a note, we will have opportunities for all the board members to participate in the fair as a part of our booth as well this year. But as Jessica said, at this point, we just need to select a La Plata delegate and an Archuleta delegate.
I'm willing to do it again. Both of them.
Great. Thank you, John. Dan, go ahead.
Well, I'm just looking for John. He had to log out and log back in, so he's there.
Okay. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate John's volunteering, but I would like to just ascertain whether anyone from the Archuleta district wants that fund privilege as well.
I'll say I'll be there, so I'll be glad to do it in our county.
I would then move that John Lee be appointed for the La Plata County Fair and Bob Lynch appointed for the Archuleta County Fair representative.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
All abstained? Excellent. Thank you. And again, thank you, John, for willing to do that. We'll see you at the county fair. Let's, thank you. Thanks, Tim. Kohler, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment on that. This is the first time I think that the board has been invited to help out at the booth at the county fair. I think it's a real positive. I look forward to it. Unfortunately, I won't be here this year, but hopefully it'll be extended next year and I can do it because it would be something I'd really do if I were in town. So thank you for doing that. It's a good thing.
Yep. Here. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, on that line, thanks, Kohler. I was going to bring that up too. Yeah, let us know what the sign up process is or procedures, because if possible, I'd love to take a shift as well.
Yes, we'll develop a sign up sheet with dates and times, and the board can go in there and fill in their names.
So is it clear that so there's only a booth in La Plata County?
Correct.
Okay.
But we're looking at possibly, that's historically been the case, and I'm not entirely sure why. So Carrie is already looking into maybe changing that for next year.
Okay. Joe.
Yeah, I'm also sent an application to the Durango Farmers Market to have a booth there. I think we have to be a little careful about putting all our eggs in the county fair basket because our constituency is greater than that. So I'll let folks know about that, but I've volunteered to take that shift at the farmers market whenever. I've asked for July 2nd and July 7th for dates, so I'll let you know about that. But Jessica and I have discussed this before too, and I think we need to keep our faces out there in whatever way we can. So just throwing that out. I don't know, maybe I think there's a farmer's market in Pagosa too. And maybe that's something we could look at. I think Bayfield might have one. So.
Cool. All right, let's push on. Appoint CFC annual meeting delegate.
Just really quickly, when I read the agenda, it says we're supposed to approve the fair budget as well. Nope. I just heard the delegates get approved.
Thank you. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, Joe, I thought you were making a comment. Were you actually asking for action there?
Well, are we going to discuss the member appreciation funds?
I believe that's after on the agenda, it's after the CFC delegate.
Okay.
So right now we just need to approve the budget.
Yeah, okay.
And it's a bit of a weird thing because the budget at the fair has traditionally been, Hillary, can you remind me of the number?
Yes, 2,500 per fair.
So unfortunately, we did not communicate that last year, John Lee, if you're wondering why it's so low. We forgot to tell you that's how much was supposed to be spent. So we went over last year, which was fine, but we are suggesting to bump up the fair budget. And that's attached to our member appreciation lunch memo as well.
So we had action 2 years ago on increasing it. And last year when we went with the budget, Carl had confirmed that it was $15,000 collectively, 10,000 and 5,000.
Yeah, we don't have any of those records, John, because we look back. And Carl, do you want to mention anything?
I can't recall, but I'm not questioning John.
So, but this year we do have a budget that was in the 2022 budget, and that's set at what's in the memo. And so what we're suggesting is that we bump the numbers up by double and use the funds that we would have spent on the member appreciation lunches to help bump those numbers up. So we're asking for that approval today.
All right, Tim, go ahead.
So, yeah, the way I read it is that the addition to the La Pala County Fair funding is in the member appreciation funds memo, which is not on the current docket in the agenda. So we could either change the agenda and vote on this, or we could go and follow the agenda and come back to it. I would, in either case, would make the motion that we approve the member appreciation funds memo recommendations, which would include the increase in the budget for the county fair. If that's out of order on the agenda, I will wait until it's in order.
I apologize. That was our fault. They probably should have been back to back because they were connected. So apologize for that confusion.
So I'll make a motion to change the agenda to address the member appreciation funds memo, and in that same motion, approve the recommendations in that memo. How's that?
I'll second that, because that clears up the reason why I had my hand up, why we would approve a lower number, then come back around and do a higher number. So I'll second your motion, Tim.
Thanks.
Okay. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, my concern with this is, again, what I mentioned earlier, we've always put a lot of money into the county fairs, and I think, and I don't know how the money is spent on, I think it's usually we bid on animals, and that benefits maybe 1 or 2 kids in each county. I would rather see us put more money into the food bank, and again, food banks in in La Plata and Archuleta, because that, again, we're reaching more people with that. And again, I just don't think we should be putting all of our, or so much of our money into the county fair. I like the scholarships and the certification part of this, but I'd like to see like maybe 3,000 for each of the county fairs, And then the remainder go into the food bank to spread that money around to a greater part of our constituency.
Okay, so just sort of as quick process check without, so we have an open, and correct me if I'm doing this wrong, but we have an open motion. We are discussing the motion at hand for an up-down vote on that. If you're proposing to modify that motion, we can sort of step into that, but I think we have to restrict the conversation to the motion at hand. Do I have that right?
That sounds right, John. I mean,
Okay.
I think he can sort of have a comment and discussion. If
Yeah,
he
so he's,
wants.
right, so you're offering, so you're opining and saying, hey, this is my position on this matter. But I want to make clear that you're actually offering your opinion leading towards the vote, and you're not suggesting that we are open this up and start reallocating funds in now. Is that your intention? And again, I'm not pushing on you. I'm just trying to get clarity on what you want.
Well, I guess I'd like to hear a little more discussion about
Okay.
it. And then, I can make
Okay.
a proposal if I want.
Terrific. Okay, I will push on and come back to you if you wish. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, it feels like cart before the horse, because I also want to talk about the full proposal and not just approve the 4-H. But so I don't know, is there a legal way to say, can we pause? Or do
You
we
could
just have to go-
you could move, because it's a two-part motion. I suppose you could move to bifurcate the motion and say you would like to hear the portion on amending the agenda so that fair budget and member appreciation lunch budgets are being considered concurrently, and then we could have the second part of the motion, which includes approving both fair budget and member appreciation budget memos as presented as a second standalone motion.
Okay,
you'd move to
I would like
bifurcate
to
the motions.
amend. Yeah, I would move to bifurcate the motions.
Okay. So we got a second on that, or do you need to do, or can we just do that? Is that just one of those things you just request it and by definition it's split? Or do we have to?
No, we'd need to have a second and then a sort of open to procedural discussion about whether or not we should bifurcate it, vote on whether or not to bifurcate it.
Okay, so Kirsten, we have a second. So now, okay, so we're sort of stepping into the Russian dolls. So we're now gonna have a conversation about should we bifurcate it? We'll vote on the bifurcation, come back up to the upper Russian dolls. We have a second. Does anybody if you have if your hand is up to discuss the bifurcation motion, please leave it up. Ted, go ahead.
I mean, in my opinion, we could avoid bifurcation if we just continue to discuss everything that's on the member appreciation funds memo. But I'd only offer that up if that made sense for what Rachel was trying to accomplish. I mean, is it our goal to continue and have thorough discussion on the whole member appreciation funds memo, or do we truly need to bifurcate? So that's my kind of question to Rachel, if you want to.
Okay. Thank you.
All I was trying to do was, I don't want to vote on the county fair budget prior to discussing and coming up with a comprehensive understanding of what we're doing with community appreciation lunches, et cetera.
Fair
I
enough.
don't know what gets us there. I'm a little lost in this.
I mean, I would say that I think we can probably discuss all of it based, or I guess Tim has a comment on it.
Yeah, I think my motion was really clear. It was change the agenda and talk about the member appreciation memo. I said that should be, the motion suggests that we approve the recommendations in that memo. So it's open. I'm not quite sure, Rachel, or anyone else, why we can't just go into a discussion about that memo and its recommendations. And there's no need for an additional motion to change the agenda again or something. I'm confused on that as well. The motion to me was clear. Allow us to talk about this before the other thing that was on the agenda we approved, and let's talk about this memo, which happens to include the recommendation, amongst others, for the allocation of funds to the fair. It doesn't limit it to just that. So I don't know if that
Okay.
helps or not.
So.
Okay, go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, so I think the benefit of bifurcating it is, one says, yeah, let's talk about this, and we can all vote to talk about it, but some of us might not be voting for the second piece of it. So if you want to vote for one and not for the other, it's a little harder when you have a two-section vote. So I think always we should try to have a single thing. So for me, that's why I seconded the bifurcation, and that's why I will be voting for the bifurcation.
And if I could just address Tim's issue, I mean, I believe Tim is right that this sort of discussion, big picture discussion, is within the scope of his original motion. I just sort of, might lead to people having a difficult time as long as we were sort of paused to reframe what exactly we're voting on before we vote on it. I think we're sort of considering both memos as presented. So anything that's a topic on both memos could be part of the discussion.
Okay.
Without bifurcating.
So Rachel, if you withdraw your motion, then we could just continue to discuss the memo and then decide whether we want to make any changes.
Thank you, Tim. I do understand that, and I will withdraw my motion.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So let's get to the heart of the matter here. So we have an open motion on the table. Or did we?
We have
Sorry,
an
I got
open
one.
motion to amend the
To-
agenda and discuss both of these memos simultaneously and
Yes.
and to approve them as
Right, so
presented
thank you. So the-
simultaneously.
Okay, right, correct. Okay, anybody want to discuss that any further, or can we merge these two sections and just talk about the money? Dan, go ahead. You're on mute. Dan, you're on mute.
Yeah, I can't see where we're going to solve our complaints with the member appreciation people that been complaining by reallocating this money for something that they're probably not going to benefit from. I agree with the line worker scholarship that we need to probably put money towards that, this BPI certification. We've already donated so damn much money to these nonprofits that the regular membership is not benefiting from this. I'd rather see us cut rates and everybody participate. And then a question of Joe's 4-H sponsorship at the fairs. It's not one or two people. If it's done properly, every kid that has an animal to sell or goes through the sale or cake or leather craft, whatever, can do a add-on and distribute an equal amount to every kid that goes through the fairs. So anyway, I don't see where some of this is going to help the people that are complaining about our appreciation dinners.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Sue, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Looking at this, I kind of tend to agree with Dan. 1,000 people come last year to the appreciation luncheons. That gives staff and directors an opportunity to really talk to our membership. And we know that we impacted a lot of people last year. We don't know how many we impact by the other requested funds here. I guess my thoughts is, I don't mind seeing 5,000 go to the 4-H kids. Again, to Dan's point, if you do an add-on to the bids, then every kid who participates benefits. I think the line worker scholarship, the BPI certifications, those should be totally separate and not part of this budget at all. And to the food bank donation, I think we already give quite a bit there, so I'm not sure how many people that impacts. Is it 200? Is it 50? So I guess I have concern doing away with the membership luncheons and diverting the money to these causes. So I would not be in favor of voting for this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. I'm going to go ahead. We got to do a quick gut check here, a time check. Matt's going to dial in at 11:20, so we're going to table this in a couple of minutes if we're not ready for a vote, just to give you guys a heads up, because we're not going to leave him on hold at $2,500 an hour. Jessica, did you have some clarification, or you want to weigh in here?
Yes, thank you. Just to give a little more context, the member appreciation lunches actually take 2 full days of my staff's time to set up and break down, and that's the line workers. And right now, when we're doing high fire season work, we have to have those crews out in the field doing the mitigation. And so I cannot afford to have them take away from fire mitigation and spend 2 full days setting up and breaking down. So I understand about the member appreciation, but we're not sure what value we get out of it, in all honesty. And we've talked to other co-ops. A lot of co-ops don't do this anymore for the same similar reasons, is that they found that they were getting a lot of negative comments and it wasn't benefiting the whole community. And while we had a lot of folks coming, it also didn't provide a good diversity to touch all of our members. So my staff took it upon themselves to look at a continuous improvement and say, hey, can we try something new? So I think my staff is just really looking for the board's support to try something new this year. A lot of these items in the memo, I'm really proud of staff are looking through to say, where do we think we could touch our members in different ways? So it's more diversity across a different group, different generations. One thing they're also thinking through is that just the sustainability of the future. So, 1 or 2 days of member appreciation lunches is good for some, but we're trying to think through what is the greater benefit to create a bigger future, a better future. And so that's why they suggested, well, let's use these funds for scholarships, which we really need. So that's why they're combined, is that we don't have the money to fund additional scholarships, but we found that if we found these savings, that we could go ahead and do that, because like the line workers is really difficult. We're having a heck of a time trying to get people to work, and we're actually down a lineman. So that's kind of just giving the more context about why you're seeing this, is that one, we're not going to be able to have crews not be out in the field for those 2 days, well, actually 4 days, setting up, breaking down, because then they can't go out in the field for half a day to do the work. So we'd probably have to add more additional contracting money to have a contractor come out and set up all the tables and the chairs. So there's actually a lot that goes into planning the member appreciation lunches that actually is not on the memo, because the FTE time spent on those is pretty significant. So anyway, we're just looking to say, can we just get your support to try something new this year? These are some ideas we had. If you want to move the funding around or have different ideas, that's great. But sorry, I just want to give a little more context on the reason behind the memo.
That's super helpful. Thank you for that. Okay, let's get a couple more comments. Kirsten, then Rachel, then I have a comment, and we'll keep pushing into this.
I'm wondering if we need to have a separate vote on stopping the member stuff, the member appreciation things, and then vote on how to spend that money. Because I'm hearing 2 people say they really want, I think I'm hearing 2 people say they really still want those member appreciation things. I don't, but I'm wondering if we need to have that vote separately. And then we'll figure out how to spend the money, or are we still going to just try to loop all this all in chat? Anybody? Okay, I'll chat then. If we were to get rid of the member appreciation things, which I think is a good idea, it does not impact enough people. I think that the 4-H is a really great idea. I like to do the add-ons. I know Joe usually likes to do the animals. I'm sorry, John likes to do the animals. John, the the great thing about doing the animals is LPEA does get a little more mention, because you get your picture in the paper with your animal. The bad thing about it is only goes to one kid. So that's where I go with that, is the add-on I think is better for the community as a whole. I know in Archuleta County, the fair is a huge thing, and if we were to have a booth next year, I would volunteer to staff it at the 3 coolest hours of the day.
Okay,
Okay, that's it.
thank you. Rachel, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess mine, it's just maybe a global observation. It seems like whenever we have these things come up on the community front, seems like there's a lot of confusion in the back, because maybe, at least for me, I can speak for myself, I am not sure of the overarching strategy and vision. And I know this comes up at Roundup. Wait, where are the other places that LPA puts money into the community, which is this amazing thing we do, so that in turn we can guide some of our strategy there to kind of parallel or match it. And, there's this amazing work going into everything from the surveys to the town hall meetings, LPA annual meeting. There's all these touch points, but it's just kind of hard sometimes to understand how much this one decision matters, or maybe it doesn't, or how much this does duplicate to a certain audience, just without having that broader picture.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and offer my own opinion on this. I think we need to be careful. I think we're getting sort of outside the lines here on doing the staff's work for them, or hijacking their work. They brought a proposal forward to reallocate funds away from something that they viewed as low value and expensive and time consuming, and having a bunch of knock-on consequences during fire season, and had an internal discussion about where that could be used to meet, where they could do things that were not quite as heavily weighted onto staff, while still meeting the 5-point objectives. This is their proposal. I think the appropriate path forward for the board, particularly on a matter of this scale, is a simple up-down vote. And if it's a down vote, I think they would welcome some commentary on why we're downvoting it. But I think it's an inappropriate use of the board's time to adjudicate their recommendation down below the up-down. Is, should be $2,500 to the food bank? Should it be, $5,000 to line workers? Like that is for staff to recommend to us, and we should up-down that and not get into this weeds. That is my personal opinion on this matter, and I think we should vote accordingly. So with that, my hand is down. Why don't we do Joe, and then I think we should and if we can squeeze John in, we'll need to hit the pause button and get over to do the Matt stuff. Joe, go ahead. If you got a minute, if you keep go ahead.
Want to thank Dan for the explanation. I don't quite understand what the add-ons are, but I can live with that. But I guess I'd like to just call the question, and my suggestion on top of that would be to let's just go with what we've got, and then maybe have a discussion about this in a couple of months, and maybe get a little bit of a report on how that money's being distributed, and then we can.
We're calling the question. We need.
Sorry, did you mean Joe? Did you mean call the vote? I think you meant call the vote.
Right.
Okay.
So call the question means end debate and go immediately to vote. So that would need to be second. There's no discussion on that. We just have to have a 2/3 vote to immediately proceed to the vote on the underlying motion, which I will restate when we get there.
Okay, well, I'm gonna withdraw that temporarily and say that I'd like to take a look at this in 2 months, go with what we've got, and let's call the vote now.
So the motion, so the motion is to call the vote on Tim's motion, okay? And it's been seconded by Kohler, so we need to proceed immediately to have a 2/3 vote to cut off debate.
Okay, all in favor to cut off debate?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Holly, are your hands up or down? I can't really tell. Down. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. I'm counting Joe, Dan, Tim, Ted, Kohler, John Witchell, and Sue. So that is 7 out of 12. That's not 2/3.
Okay.
But so the motion motion fails.
Okay, so that's fine. So we'll continue the discussion after we go meet with Matt. So this conversation is to be continued.
A motion to table, yeah.
Okay, so can I get a motion to table?
Motion to table.
Thank you.
Second.
Ted, Dan, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? Okay. Okay, great. So we are now going to go, we have one minute here. Matt's going to join us. We'll resume the conversation after we get through all the legal stuff. Again, just as a reminder, Matt's very expensive. So we don't want to waste his time. Okay, terrific. Matt, glad you're here. Thanks. The floor is yours.
Great. Thanks, John. It's good to see all of you. Few updates across 3 different cases for the public purposes, and then I think we'll go into executive session and we'll talk about the partial buy down case in particular and kind of where that sits, but can give a procedural update on that case. First, we reached a stipulation for dismissal without prejudice from the Adams County case. So LPEA will exit its claim in that case. If LPEA wants to bring that claim again in the future with regard to the propriety of the addition of the non-utility members, it can do so under this stipulation. But for now, that case is starting to proceed down towards trial between United Power and Tri-State. LPEA will not be participating in that case. So that's first update on Adams County. I think since we last met, ALJ Scott Hempling issued his order on the reserved issues case. There were 2 particular items that LPEA was active in that case, which are reserved issue 2, reserved issue 4. There's some nuance to reserved issue 4. LPEA ultimately prevailed on both of its points in the litigation, although there's some items that weren't decided with regard to reserved issue 4 that we're still kind of working through. But on reserved issue 2, material benefit to LPEA from the change in how transmission assignment is going to work going forward. Tri-State's rate committee has been directed to essentially directly assign transmission facilities, and it's a 7-figure benefit on an annual basis to LPEA. The nuts and bolts of how that are going to work out will be determined through future conversations, at the Tri-State level, which LPEA will participate in. But that's a really big win from a customer perspective. BDP, which is the partial buy down case, United Power continues to advocate heavily against approval of the settlement, certification of the settlement up to FERC. They filed extensive comments opposing LPEA's position and the approval of the settlement, and Tri-State's position as well. We subsequently filed reply comments on that. We were joined, and I was really pleased with how this came out. We were joined by High Plains, we were joined by Jemez, we were joined by Poudre Valley, we were joined by San Miguel. So we had kind of a joint presentation from the settling members. So every member that's pursuing partial requirements, with the exception of Mountain Parks, joined that pleading. We can get into the content of that pleading a little bit in the executive session. United Power subsequently filed for what we call leave in regulatory to put in a reply trying to rebut some of the positions that we took. Some of our responses under seal, there were some confidential communications that we put forward. United Power actually tried to publicly disclose the communications that we had put in under seal. They were chastised by the chief judge for doing that. They were ordered to refile as a confidential filing that basically masked the communications. amongst the settling parties. And United Power just made that filing earlier this week. So the next step in that case is that the ALJ will take this under consideration and make a determination as to whether to certify that order up to the settlement up to FERC. And then at that point, if they choose to do so, it will be in front of FERC. So that's kind of the quick rundown of where we are across the different cases. Happy to take any questions, or we can jump into executive session and talk a little more about where the BDP goes from here. Don't see any.
Okay. Everybody have their link. Let's take a moment here.
And just for the record, so we'll need a motion to go into executive session, and we did amend the agenda to have 3 items on that executive session: discussions with legal counsel on litigation matters, discussion with the tri-state director on confidential matters, and discussion of a confidential business matter.
I'm going to go into executive session.
Ted, thank you.
Rachel seconds.
Yep. Great. Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Terrific. All opposed? You abstained? Okay. And Kohler's support process. Kohler's going to join immediately, or are we going to ping him to join us?
We're going to talk mostly about the BDP, so he can join that. It's a settled issue, fully aligned with Tri-State there.
Terrific. Okay, we'll see you guys on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're back. There are no action items coming out of executive session. We're going to pick up. Let's just. We are way behind for the first time in a long time. So let's get this conversation. We're going to resume the conversation around the appreciation budget, the recommended change to the how we are spending money for member appreciation. This is to get back to where you were. This is on page 51 of your board of your packet. And we, correct me if I have this wrong, we tabled it. We were having a discussion about trying to either get to a vote or a decision or a path forward on this memo.
Yep. So where we were, we have a pending motion from Tim that was seconded to adjust the agenda to have these 2 memos considered together and then to approve them both as presented. So that is what is currently up for discussion.
Okay. All right. So we're resuming the discussion in that frame. Kirsten, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. John, you had spoken about diving too much into the details, and I think I can agree that maybe how the money is split up might be a staff detail. I'm not sure that I can agree that deciding to stop the member things at all. I'm not sure that we can decide that stopping the member appreciation at all is a staff decision. I think that because that is one of the opportunities for the board to meet and greet and hear from our folks, I would prefer that to be a decision that I would vote to stop doing, but a decision that we should make separate from this. How are we going to break out the money thing? Because that break out the money, yes, I can agree with you that could be a staff decision in line with policies that we've already propagated.
Thank you. John Lee.
I think the sheet detailing this money and reallocating it is actually in conflict with what we voted on in 2020. After I had been the first time as a member for the county fairs, I presented at that we had the same dollar amount for the last 22 years or something like that. And with inflation, it would be increased. And and Britt accepted that, and we voted. I guess Graham's gonna have to find that on recordings later on, but and that's where the $15,000 came from on it. It was to get 22 years worth of expense on that, so that we could do some constructive stuff at the county fair. To the point that it only helps one person, it doesn't. When we do the buyback program, when we don't take the animal and it goes back, it can go back to the county fair board, it can go back to judging teams. That goat can get resold again, or that sheep or that pig or that cake for that matter. Those things get multiplied in that sense. Along with these add-ons, which we talked about, there is an opportunity to give a dollar amount to participants with that. But in the livestock auction, what having a bidder that has enough money to bid on an animal does is it helps keep the floor an appropriate amount for that kid and his animal. What we would each not like at an auction, if we were buying something, is that person bidding against us, because it might bump up the price or raise that price a little bit. By LPEA having enough funds to be able to bid on livestock at the county fair, it supports multiple of them, not directly by buying that animal, but by keeping that support up in the community as a whole. So I think there's multiple ways of doing it. And this last year, I guess, I would ask Drew if him listening to it, his kids are in 4-H, and having LPEA recognized and then get resold again because we don't take the animal. I think that it's deeper than just let's give a kid money for a goat. It goes much deeper than that, to include, when I'm in there interviewing with the kids, the decision on which animals to bid on comes from a conversation I've had for the previous 4 or 5 hours, walking the livestock grounds, talking to kids. What does your project mean to you? What does it do for you? How is agriculture in La Plata County or Archuleta County do something for you? So I think those are great avenues to be in for LPEA. One of the things that I had done the first year I was there, we were La Plata Electric Association, which very many people don't associate with LPEA, even though it's the definition of LPEA. They think it's an electric company, La Plata Electric Company, like Durango Electric, who installs stuff. And so this last year, with us being LPEA, the number of people that came up and talked about it, our hats, the hat that I had and our little vest that I have even says LPEA on it, not La Plata Electric Association. So I think there's a lot of value there. And I think it'd be in conflict with what we voted on 2 years ago to fund and put into the budget, to then say, oh, it was $2,500 each fair and we think it should double. That's not supporting what we did 2 years ago.
Great. Thanks, John. Let me hit the pause button here for a second. There's been a fair amount of commentary here. If I could re-summarize, what the staff wants is to not do the member appreciation. And then there is the secondary question of, okay, with the freed up budget, is this the right composition? Are we at a place where we could maybe split this vote on the first part and get that over the finish line? Or we can continue the discussion. But I think we should try to drive this conversation at least to get the outcome that staff is asking for.
I think having accurate information is as important as just running to get a memo addressed.
I was sorry, not, what I was getting at was, would it be, I was getting at a suggestion that said, one possible way to get through this is to say, well, without making any decisions on how the freed up budget goes, could we call for a vote to not do the member appreciation full stop? Because I think that's really getting to the heart of what staff wants. And then we now have freed up budget, and we can continue that conversation now, or I would suggest table it perhaps for a longer conversation. But either way, I think it's we need to try to drive this towards conclusion.
And can we, with the current agenda, do that, Graham, the way it's written?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's open for discussion, right? It's been on the table, and it's something we've been discussing. So I think to get to where John is saying, we would need a motion to amend Tim's previous motion, and just to have the decision of the board be to cancel the member appreciation lunch, and to look into how to reallocate those funds and to report back to the board at a later date on that. Is that sort of?
I like that.
So moved.
Well,
Second.
okay. Okay, so we want to have discussion on that.
So I had my hand up.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
Kristen
sorry.
entered into the conversation, and that resulted in a motion. That seems out of order to me, and my hand was up to call the question.
Okay.
Again. So I guess I'll just let it go here, but we'll go on with the motion, but I just point that out.
Okay. Joe?
Just, do we need to withdraw? Does Tim need to withdraw his motion before we can vote on this other one, or?
No, we would vote on whether or not to amend it. If the amendment fails, and we revert back to Tim's existing motion.
Okay, well, I guess I'd vote in favor of dropping the luncheons, and I think it's up to the board members. If we want to meet more people out there in general conversation, I think it's up to us to identify some of those situations where we can do that. And I'd just like to move on, and then we can reevaluate this thing. As Graham said, we can reevaluate this thing later, but I'm ready to vote on this one.
Great, thanks, Joe. Kirsten?
Yeah, I'm going to be really petty here. Tim, I was not out of order. My hand was up before you. I spoke before you. And then John was talking about maybe we should have this motion, at which point I said, can we even do that? I don't think that's out of order. So great, now I'm out of order. See you, bye.
Okay. Okay.
So I guess if we have no further discussion, we'd have a vote on whether or not to amend.
So can we get a show of hands on whether or not to amend? Hands up.
I have a.
Please read what we're voting on.
Yep.
Yes,
So,
yeah,
all right.
thank you.
So
Clarified,
so
thank
as a
you.
point of order, we have a motion to amend the main motion, and that it would amend the motion to canceling the member appreciation lunch, and have a staff report on those funds at a allocation of those funds at a later date. So right, basically just cancel the cancel the member appreciation lunches. So all in favor of canceling the member appreciation, amending the motion to be a motion to cancel the lunches.
Okay, so all in favor, hold your hand up, say aye. All opposed? All abstained? Okay, so now we have the new motion. So go ahead. So we're coming back up the Russian dolls. And so we can continue the conversation if nobody has any further questions, or someone can call the vote. But I think if nobody has any further conversations, then we vote on that to move forward. So, but we're continuing the discussion now.
Can you restate what the next motion would be that we would be voting on?
So now,
Vote what you just described.
so now the motion has been amended to cancel the member appreciation lunches. So that is now what's up. That is now the pending motion.
Okay. No further discussion.
Can we just vote on it?
Yeah.
No, we voted to amend. So
Voted to
your
amend.
motion was to approve the memorandums as presented. That motion was amended to canceling the luncheons. And so now we're voting on the main motion, which is whether or not to. The amendment passed. So now the main motion is whether or not to cancel the luncheons.
Dan, go ahead.
Well, I'm really confused now. We amended Tim's motion. And I think our amendment changed the whole intent of Tim's motion by approving the proposed allocation. Am I wrong there? I'm confused totally now.
Yes, so there is no allocation approval pending right now. This is merely to decide whether or not to cancel the motion, and then the staff would report back on potential reallocations at a later date.
It just simplified what we're asking, right? Or just clarified the first decision is do you cancel, and then second decision is where do you put the money? So we're just doing number one, right?
Thank you.
Correct.
That's Rachel's intent in the first place by splitting.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Okay, all in favor, hands up. Okay, all opposed? Sue?
So
one opposed? All abstained? Okay, thank you. The motion carries. So member appreciation is canceled. Thank you. Okay, let me just offer a path forward here. I'm not driving it. I'm just offering a path forward. There are three possible directions to get the staff the second half of what they're asking for here. Number one, we could make a motion to approve their allocations as requested. Option two is we can table it and take a longer conversation offline. And option three is we could approve staff to allocate the funds at their discretion, given the feedback that they've heard today.
I move to table the allocations.
I'm sorry, John, go
I
ahead.
move to table the allocation the allocation presentation.
I'll second that.
Second for Sue. Okay, let's tackle that one. Any discussion? Rachel, you have your hand up first.
I know, I'm so annoying on this. Could that proposal come back with also just the larger, here's our strategy of the ways that we engage with the community?
Okay. Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. Are any of the things in that allocation time sensitive? Past July board meeting.
Hillary, that's for you. I don't believe so, but I want to double check with Hillary since her staff.
The main one was just the lunches, because obviously that's a heavy organizational lift. So that's done. We would just need to know the fair budget before the fair, which is
August.
in August. So we would need to have a decision on that next month.
Yeah, in July.
And Graham we do not have any documentation in any of the minutes describing that the fair budget changed, but Graham will be watching the actual board meeting to see if there was a decision made. So we'll report back on that.
I have to chime in and say, I know I didn't remember that when I responded once to Jessica's. Back when I did this, it was way in the 1,500, 2,000 range. I do think John Lee is correct in his memory when I remember back to doing a vote to change that. So search the record so we know.
Thank you. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I wonder if this is really a board level decision at this point. Just as we talked about previously with within the board's budget for reallocation of travel expenses, you know, we were dealing with within an approved budget number and just reallocation. In this case, by virtue of this vote, we have eliminated as a board, we've eliminated a category of budget spending, which is the member appreciation lunch. So that funding reverts back to staff or operational budget, which is already approved at its top level. From my perspective, the board doesn't need to weigh into this. This is an allocation or a reallocation that is at the staff level decision-making. And I think we're making a mistake messing around down here. So I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Speaking on my own behalf, I share Tim's view. This is not appropriate for the board to be evaluating this at any level, any more than we would be evaluating any other small dollar purchase that is well within the staff's both expertise and experience. So I will be voting against tabling this motion, and if I have the opportunity, would encourage pursuing a clarification that the staff be given that staff uses its existing authority to make the allocations as they see fit. That is my own opinion. Thank you. Okay, Rachel.
I can 100% support that as long as the board does approve an overarching strategy, because that is our purview. And that's not what people do or how they spend their money, just big picture. What are we striving for?
I think could you clarify your thinking there? Because it seems that that's pretty thoroughly covered by the North Star.
Let's see, the North Star about operational excellence and things of that sort.
Yes.
I guess it's more so, and if this exists, I am so sorry that I just keep banging on this. I think it's when these little things have come, it's just like, why choose X versus Z? And if you're asking for approval, like we have to understand the why behind that. And theoretically that why is something that if they're asking for our approvals come from a board level or something that's been put forward before. So, you know, we're striving, our community outreach and impact strategies are to advance career opportunities that align with the electric field, to increase awareness of beneficial electrification. I don't know, just something that helps give the why a little bit. Maybe I'm in a tunnel here.
Okay, thank you for that. John Lee, go ahead.
So this proposal of redistribution says that it totals $25,000, but when you read it, it totals $30,000. So I'm at a loss of, you know, we're going to kick it back to staff to still have this be in question. When you read the first one for 4-H sponsorship, it talks about doubling it to a total of $10,000 to better support the ag community, but it only lists $5,000 to the side of it.
Hillary, can you?
Yeah, we already have 5,000 allocated to it, John. So it's just an additional 5,000.
Right. It's the same money. We're not asking for more, but we'll go back and watch the board meeting to see if we voted on increasing the 4-H. And then we'll find the money in the budget, probably out of maybe one of the consulting line item to beef up on the 4-H. We'll meet the obligations that were set forth by the board.
Tim, go ahead.
Thank you.
So Rachel, you make a good point about strategic initiatives and goals. From my perspective, and I wanted to say this earlier, but there's already been a lot said, so I'm trying to be a little more brief, but this is economic development. It's clearly within our economic development goal. We're reallocating, we're eliminating something that didn't fairly provide a higher impact of economic development than what is suggested as this reallocation, right? 4-H sponsorship is total economic development. You know, it helps the community to ensure that there is an agricultural economy that's vitally important to our community in a small way, but it's still economic development. Same way with line worker scholarships to ensure that there are Energy Star or whatever raters, and a food bank donation that goes to a large swath of a low-income community. That's economic development. I think it fits under there perfectly, and I think that's a good question to ask. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Hillary, do you have a thought here?
Yeah, I would just add, and just to respond to Rachel as well. I know Tim and John, you've already commented, but our 5-year operational strategy, which is on our website, and it's under the LPEA strategy section under About Us. We've identified, as a team, 6 overarching objectives, which we call the North Star. And all of our communication efforts and all of our community outreach efforts go to support each of the points on the North Star. So just as an example, you could look at our point on be safe and excellent, or keep the lights on, right? So a lineman scholarship would go under there. Under prepare for the future, that is where all of our outreach around beneficial electrification would go. And so I just wanted to remind you that that is a document out there, and that is what guides all of our efforts at the organizational level.
Thanks, Hillary. Okay. Any additional discussion before we vote on tabling this motion? Okay. All in favor of tabling the conversation?
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All opposed? Okay.
1, 2,
All
3.
abstained? Okay. All right, the motion is passed. This subject is tabled to be continued at a later date. Okay, moving on. It is break time. I don't really care what time it is. It's break time.
Hey, John, do we have to have it discussed at the July meeting so we can meet the fair financial deadline, or I just wonder if we need to put a date on that?
I don't. Let's not. Your point is noted. Let me circle back with Jessica and figure that out offline. But yes, if there's a time sensitive thing, we'll make sure that it gets tackled at the July meeting, or if it's not time sensitive, we'll just sort of figure it out in due course. Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, it is 1. You get 29 minutes. We will see you back here at 1:30 to finish up the meeting. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get rolling. So we are back down to the reports, and we should have toughed it out. Could have just ran through all this. Okay, so we're on number 9, reports. So let's start with the attorney report, please.
I'll just refer everyone to my written report and take any questions.
Okay. Okay, if there's no questions for Graham, let's move to the director reports. Start with Roundup. Who's driving Roundup?
Any questions on the Roundup report? It did not make your packet. I did send it out to folks. Basically, we had asked for some money and we spent some money. I can give you the numbers if you haven't had a chance to look at your email from a couple of days ago, or the link that is now in the board packet. We just didn't want, I didn't want to put it in the board packet and mess up people's board packet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah. Item 4 on the second page says fiscal agent should be local to keep funds local. There was some discussion. Is there more to that, or?
Yeah, I can give you a little more flavor for that. One of the requestees has a non-local fund agent. It's actually somebody over in Maryland. So since they do take a percentage of the money that we give them, they take, I don't know what the percentage this is, but frequently it can be like 5 to 10% can go to the fiscal agent. We said, okay, we should try to use local fiscal agents, and there's plenty of local fiscal agents around this area. It's not like they can't not be found. I think this was just sort of an ease. Somebody happened to know who these folks were and they've used them. So we talked about, we did not make a policy change, but we talked about the need to have the fiscal agent be local, so that 5 to 10% of it doesn't leak out of the area. What was that about?
And that fiscal agency also provides the 501c3 designation, or is that?
I don't know, Tim.
All right. Well, I'm aware of local fiscal agents, and you're right, there are several. I think if they decide to do something, that they should perhaps, do like an RFP or a solicitation of some sort.
Okay.
Try and identify that, and that would also allow Roundup to define what it is they want, right?
Okay.
So anyway, I think that's a good move if you can do it, and support it. Thanks.
Okay, super. I'll take that back to the board. I have a question back for you then, Tim. Is it typical that the 501c3 comes through the fiscal agent or through
It can. I mean, it can, and often that's part of the reason you do that. If you already have your designations and everything, then it's just a question of accounting. And so I'm not sure exactly the scope of what it is that you're seeking there or what they need, but often like Community Foundation or Local First Foundation, both of which provide that service, do so in a way that allows the organization to get the tax deductibility and also to apply for grants with that as well. I don't know that Roundup needs to apply for grants, but anyway, it's wise to bring it more closer to home. There are some worthy organizations here.
Great, thanks. Any other questions on Roundup? Back to you, John.
Thank you. Go ahead for Tri-State. Kohler, you're up.
Thank you. So I have 2 reports in the board dockets, but the main one, the board report, it comes out too late to meet the deadline, so it is in the drive. You can take a look at that. I'll go through a couple real quick things on that I think are of interest. The first one is the reorganization that Tri-State did. It was a very painful, very large reorganization. They actually cut 30 positions, 3 of them being executive vice presidents. And that's kind of the face for the board, people that we work with quite a bit and that you know more than you do the other ones that you don't see all the time. So that was big. You could definitely feel the tension at the meeting last week. It was explained by Dwayne on his procedure on how it went about, going and approaching this. It was very hard for him because they're not only employees, but they're also friends of his. And pretty much what he said is that they started with a blank page, and we hired consultants to help us out as far as figuring out this Project Ascend. And the consultants, what they did, they compared it to like 20 other utilities about the same size to get what's the best governance organization that you could come up with. So then they drew a blank sheet, an organizational chart for Tri-State with no names on it. And once they figured out what they thought would be the best model, then they started putting names on it. That was the hard part, because some got to stay and some didn't. And the savings that will not happen for about 6 months to a year because of severance pays, but there are big savings. One of the biggest issues was from the employees saying, okay, when's the next big brick in the fall? And as it's set right now, this should be it. Unless something major happens, there shouldn't be any other cuts. And in fact, there are a few jobs short that, different positions that they'll fill. So that was a tough one. I do think they have positioned it to where it will move a little bit, hopefully a little smoother going forward and a little more efficient. Those 3 positions were, absorbed by a couple other people. The main one would be Barry Ingold, and he is now the Chief Operating Officer. And he's been around for quite some time, and I think he'll do a really good job. So we'll see what happens on that as we move forward. I think it'll be a little easier to swallow next month after we've kind of absorbed it. Another person that left Tri-State was Ruth Marks. She was a Vice President Transmission, and she's actually going to now be the CEO of Mountain View. Mountain View is on eastern Colorado, and their CEO retired, so Ruth is going to be their new CEO, and I hate to see Ruth go. She was really good. She was very good. Then another real big highlight was, and this is for April, is the renewables. Renewables had a tremendous month. They were 37% of the total power and 46% of the member power. And the capacity factors for those were 53%. And give you an idea, the Niall, which is the new wind farm that they have, it had a capacity factor of 69%. And then Alta Luna, which is a solar project, it had a capacity factor of 42%. So a lot of them had some really good capacity. So the renewables was a really good month for it. Another thing that you're going to hear more and more about, I can't answer a lot of questions on it because it's brand new to us, but we're getting to figure out, and that is what they're referring to as the EAAS, Energy as a Service. And Dwayne Hiley is saying he's starting to call Tri-State, instead of Tri-State G&T, he's calling it Tri-State GT and S. He's adding that S on there for services. But this is a separate program. It's headed by Reg Rudolph. I don't know if you've ever met Reg. I really like him. I think he's the perfect person for this. He spent many years at San Isabel, which is in West Pueblo, is where their headquarters are. And the last years of his tenure there, he was the CEO. And I think one of the really valuable things about Reg is that he comes from the distribution side. And a lot of the employees there and stuff have never been on the distribution side. And he's got a lot of programs they're putting forward. There is a presentation in the drive that you can look at I'll have more information as we get more information. And I saw a correspondence with Holly when she asked questions of him, and I think his answers were right on what we've been hearing. And I think he's going to do a really good job for it. And it's going to be very, very beneficial for mainly the small co-ops that don't have the staff like what we do. But I think it's also going to be very complimentary for LPA as well. I think it'll tie right into what Dan has been doing and stuff. Another big thing is the solar update, and that was a pretty depressing update because right now there's 5 projects that Tri-State has on the books to move forward with, and pretty much the project people that are putting it on said we can't do it. We can't get solar panels, and we can't get, you know, the pricing is not there. I can't tell you the exact price because that's confidential, but I can tell you that it went up 49% from what the original price was. And then on the new RFP that Tri-State is putting out right now, from the price just less than a year ago, it's up 60-some%. But the other thing is you can't get the panels. And while we were there at the meeting, President Biden did go ahead and use the Defense Production Act to kind of generate getting panels going. But what's been said by the people that buy the panels is that it's going to take it a year to get back to, where we can get the panels, because once this investigation started, it shut down, these panels getting imported into the United States. A lot of companies closed, went out of business, they laid off people, and it stair-stepped down. So it went back to the mining of the materials and a lot of different things. So I think it's going to be real challenging to, get these projects going. One thing that Tri-State did when they signed up with these projects is they also had a penalty if they couldn't match the price and the time. Tri-State's pretty much, holding them to that as far as the price. On the time, they're giving them a little leeway because they just understand they cannot get the panels. So that's something we'll keep a close eye on. I'll have more on that as we go down. And I think those would be the main things that I wanted to bring up. So I'll open it up for questions if you have some. Tim, I see you got a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have 2, a question and a comment. So the question is, this reorganization, is its primary purpose was to reduce costs?
I would say no. I would say that that's a big part of it, but it was also to make it more efficient and to be able to maneuver going forward in a better manner than what it was. So I think it was originally started by, okay, how can we cut costs? But then it kind of developed into, okay, what's going to be a better model to move this forward? How can we do things quicker? How can we react things better and be more efficient? So I'd say it's a combination of the 2.
All right, but it sounds like reorg for efficiency was slightly higher priority than reduction of cost. Is that correct?
I hate to say yes to that, but I'd say it'd be equal to yes.
Okay. The other one was, there was a link in your report to the energy as service presentation, but it didn't work for me. So when I went there, it said it wasn't there or something. So maybe you could pass that along. When I clicked on that link,
I will pass that on because I opened it yesterday without that link. But I mean, I opened it in the drive and it worked okay. So I'll double check that and make sure I got the link correct for you.
Great. Just send it to me by email if possible. Thanks, caller.
I will do it. You bet. I'll send it out to everybody just in case it's true with everyone. Kirsten?
Yeah, so a comment and a comment. So Barry was a Navy nuclear sub skipper, so power to him, and there's definitely nimbleness in being a sub commander. So think that nimbleness we might be able to benefit from. So that's great. Concerning Reg and the work that he's doing, I think it's finally starting to make sense to people at Tri-State. I think a lot of the directors that I talked to earlier were like, I don't get why we have this guy. And I think it's really starting to make sense that this is about basically really making the distribution co-ops feed into Tri-State and be, if they're controllable, if some of their resources, for instance, if they have a large solar thing or a large battery, if they can be controlled by Tri-State, then it's going to be a win-win. So he's trying to work with folks of, well, what projects do we have that will make sense for you as a distribution co-op, but also make a lot of sense for Tri-State as a whole. And I think that's where he brings a lot to the table. I don't know how, I watched his presentation when he did it at the at your committee meeting, Kohler, the other day. And there were a lot of words wrapped around the slides. So us looking at the slides might not quite get that across.
It definitely won't. There's way too much that's talked about that the slides I think are kind of hard to understand, but they start giving you a little bit of a taste of it. And I agree with you. One of the things that they stressed over and over again is a change in mindset. And that's a change in mindset for the board, as well as employees at Tri-State, as well as co-ops. But I think they're coming up with some really, really good stuff. And I think Reg is going to push this forward. Giving an example is on-bill financing. I know with LPEA, we do it through a bank. So the bank sets that interest rate. What Tri-State is setting up is another avenue for co-ops to use to do online financing. And they're getting funds from, it's called Colorado Clean Energy, the nonprofit. They got a lot of cash there. And so the interest rate to the end consumer would be a little less than half of what you get at a bank. That was before today's interest rate increase and stuff. So it might even be a bigger deal. I'm not too sure, but these are what he's trying to do is break down some of the barriers to getting some of this stuff going, as well as providing some services. And I kind of look at some of this is that what he's doing with the co-ops, what Tri-State's trying to do with the co-ops, is kind of like what Dan is doing in LPEA with some of our loads, trying to work that and make it more efficient. And it's a big task, but he's going to drive it forward. And hopefully that helps you out there with that comment, Kirsten. Holly, you got something?
Yeah, Kohler, really, I would thank you again so much for your work at Tri-State. I mean, it's just so vitally important. You already answered my questions about energy as a service plan because I was really interested in that as well. I'll try to find that presentation at some point soon. I just have to reiterate how excited I am to see Reg Rudolph there at Tri-State. I got to see him speak at the CRA Innovation Summit, and I was just so impressed by the presentation that he gave that it made me jump for joy, to tell you the honest truth. So when I saw him moving over to Tri-State, I thought that was a brilliant move. And I actually wrote down in my notes when I read your piece is it will require a change in mindset about electrification. That is so huge right now because there is a lot of kickback and pushback and fear of the future of what it holds. And, that's a major hurdle in my personal opinion right now. And it's not only at our level, but it's also at the public level. So, I'll look on Facebook posts all the time, and there's Tri-State recently put up a post about EVs. Probably 95% of the comments about it are so negative, they just make my skin crawl. So it's at every level. And I think it becomes incumbent upon all of us. And, it's going to make even what we're doing even much more vital because cooperative principle number 6, cooperation among cooperatives. That's why Dan and our staff is getting hit so hard about information, is because we are at a forefront of this. And so I roll around in my mind all the time. I didn't really understand what DER, how important DER is to the whole overall model of things until I was talking to Dominic May. And the first thing that he said to me is when we have big generators that are like 100, 200, 500 miles away, and we have to build transmission. That's massively expensive. So if we can avoid building some of that transmission by bringing, you know, our microgrids and, you know, doing more stuff locally, we're going to start reducing that cost too. So I'm just over excited about it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Thank you so much.
And just add a little bit to your thing, and it's in one of those slides there, but it's kind of hard to figure out what they're trying to get to. They're calling it the gap, and that really is opportunity. There's so much opportunity to use what we have that will help things out instead of building new yet. And it's going to be the same with EVs. I think the biggest complaint that Tri-State gets is how are we going to be able to generate enough power for all these EVs that they're going to say. And if we don't use what we have, you know, we aren't going to be able to get to it real quick. It's going to, you know, eat us up. So this is one of those steps to help out and try to reduce costs at the same time.
Absolutely. And there's a whole lot of information. Oh, I'm sorry, Kohler. There's a lot of reports coming out that are showing that we have a lot of the solutions we need. We just need to get over the mindsets now. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Jessica?
Thank you. I was just going to kind of brag on Dan Harms and Dominic May because Reg is, you're right, he's a great person for this and fantastic, but I'd have to say I see a lot of email traffic where they're asking Dan and Dominic for ideas. So they're actually taking a lot of the lead from Dan and Dominic, and I appreciate that about our staff, just to show you how excellent and knowledgeable we have at LPEA, and I'm just super thankful. And I really appreciate how Dan and his team are totally open and willing to work with Reg, so that Reg and his team can learn and understand from our experiences. So just wanted to put that out there because I'm just really proud of them. So.
Well, thank you for that. And I didn't realize there was that much communication between Dan and Reg, but I can tell you that when I talk to Reg and when I hear about these programs, it's a mirror image of what I'm hearing back at home, and we're ahead of it. You know, this on-bill financing and different things that you're doing here. But most of the co-ops are not in our position. We're definitely a leader on this. Joe?
Yeah, thanks for the report on the wind goal. I'd just like to say I'm glad this wind has been good for something.
Yeah, for sure. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll turn it back over to you, John.
Thanks. Fast track, rock and roll.
Well, it's a short report. I didn't attend the meeting because I was floating on a river. So I don't think it was, I did talk with the chair a little bit about it, and there was nothing earth shaking that needed to be passed on. I provided the financials. I'll try and answer a question if anyone has any. And Ted attended a little bit of it. Is Ted even here? Oh, yeah. There you go. Sorry, Ted, I lost you there. All right.
Like Tim said, we had a little scheduling snafu. So my first attendance with the LPEA's Finance and Audit Committee ended up overlapping with the fast track board meeting, and I think we've got all that worked out for the future, so that won't happen. But the FAC meeting went so smoothly that I was able to get off and jump over to fast track and participate in sort of the second half of it. And you see it on the agenda that Tim posted, but discussions about making sure that fast track is thoroughly involved in any conversations that come up about sort of local broadband growth, and there are some good ones going on. It's the silos are beginning to come together a little bit, and LPEA is certainly a part of that, but other players are a part of that as well, and it's I'm optimistic that it's going to be good for the community as a whole. But that's most of the most of the part of the board meeting that I was able to attend, we were discussing those initiatives. Thanks, Tim. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you, Ted. All right.
Okay, any comments for these guys? Okay, onward, CREA.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm all excited after that, Kohler. Thank you. So first off, on that first day that CREA was, I believe, on the 26th, we all met at Poudre Valley, and then we boarded a bus to get to go to see the CSU University Powerhouse Energy Research Lab. It was fantastic. It's a LEED certified building. They do all kinds of research and development on a wide variety of things. The first thing we saw was they had one of us do like an egg beater, and what it was doing was electrolyzing some water to create some hydrogen. And that's one of the ways to have green hydrogen, power going forward. We saw one of the things that really of note in my interest, well, there was so many of them, it was just ridiculous. But anyway, it's interesting because it's a public-private partnership type program. So CSU providing the public part, and then a whole bunch of different private partnerships helping fund these research and development. The very first big one we saw was probably the oldest one in the building, and it was a pipeline association was funding how to reduce nitrous oxide emissions from their pipelines, and how to do the compressing of the natural gas along the pipelines, and that was fascinating. Another one that was really interesting was the Danish government is funding a piece on how to break a grid into microgrids. So if one piece of the grid over here is damaged for some reason, how to segment into smaller grids and still be workable. And it really, that came to mind because I sat in on a renewable Taos presentation a couple of nights ago, and they were talking about wildfire and being able to still keep pieces of their grid operating, even if, wildfire comes and destroys pieces of the transmission system or whatnot. So, I can see the applications, going forward for things like that. So that was pretty exciting. The next day we met at Poudre Valley and started out with a tour of their facility, and it's a nice facility. I'd never really been to Fort Collins before, so that was cool. One of the things that really struck me was they outsource their night dispatch, and we don't do that, right? So we have a really cool dispatch center, not to brag on LPEA, but ours is really darn cool. If you have not had an opportunity to see it, it is well worth seeing ours. But it kind of surprised me that a good portion of the utilities out there outsource their night dispatch. So that was fascinating. Let's see here. Resource adequacy is probably the big ticket item. Everybody's talking about that a lot right now. Texas they're having record amounts of demand virtually every day right now down in Texas on electricity. So, I was reading the other day that what's saving them right now is their wind and their solar. And so that was pretty fascinating. I don't know if you guys saw the news in mid-May, they managed to trip 6 of their power generators over one weekend because of maximum demand. And I know there's a lot of fear out there overriding a lot of folks' minds of not having enough resource adequacy. Let's see, another point semi-related to that. PSCO has been approved for a $509 million recovery from Winter Storm Uri. That's pretty painful. However, Minnesota has $662 million proposed, so maybe we're getting off lightly in Colorado. I don't know. There was a couple of NRECA resolutions that were pretty fascinating. The Holy Cross one, I don't have it in front of me. Maybe I could. Oh, and by the way, the picture in my report, that's me in front of the poop incinerator. Just so you guys know, that's what that is. That is a Bill Gates funded project, but fascinating still. And let me see here. The second resolution that's got the red type, that's the amendment that Tri-State is proposing into that 5.2. And what this whole resolution is geared toward is helping to get support for stranded asset costs. So at the business meeting this last year, it was kind of interesting because they had to suspend all the rules on how they normally vote on resolutions in order to kind of minimize the amount of discussion on the stranded the support, the resolution in support of stranded asset costs, because they had Dwayne Hiley speak on the side of the resolution to pass it. And then they had a guy from Missouri speak against it. And so in the long run, it got voted down. They did not overall support that resolution. And it was kind of painful to watch, to tell you the honest truth. And if I would have thought about it in retrospect, you know, when I went to the summer director school, probably 60% of those folks were farmers and ranchers, and probably half of them still had their land underneath water from the Missouri River. So whether we realize this or not, it's a mindset challenge. You know, stranded assets and flooding, in my mind, they kind of all go together in the long run, according to climate change. But that's a whole nother story to, you know, talk about another day. Anyway, Kirsten had asked about work with some of our Native American neighbors for things like electrification projects. And when I was able to talk to Liz Fittis about that, what she is saying is that they generally are not very successful. She indicated that Dale Kishbaugh had gone to the Navajo Nation and done a bunch of work. And unfortunately, as soon as he was gone, they dismantled it. So I don't know if there was a proper stakeholder engagement or something like that, because generally these types of things work a whole lot better if you get the whole community, you know, in on the discussion. So I don't honestly know what the challenge was or why they decided they did not want that work done. And John Lee had asked me about backpacks for school kids. What they do for that program, sir, is they basically pass around a collection plate. So I don't know if that's something that we want to entertain. He works nearby a school, an elementary school that has a difficult time sometimes, you know, with, you know, having adequate supplies for some of the students and whatnot. So that is something I think to keep in our mind. Maybe we could do a auction or a, you know, one of those sell raffle tickets or something like that. I don't know. I would be willing to help you organize something like that anyhow. And then something else in the direct reports, Mountain Parks is also working with Crossover. So they're going to enter into an agreement to get 30% of their electricity demand from Crossover. So that was one of the big ones that kind of, you know, stuck in my mind. I did add a report for the natural. Okay, before I go on to the next topic, Kirsten, did you have a question, ma'am?
Yeah, CRA has given that reason before about the Navajo didn't want to play. The Navajo were very involved in this project in Arizona, and it was a joint thing. So I'm thinking it might have been stakeholder buy-in. Was, you know, going and doing something for somebody is a lot different than having it as a joint project. So, and I'll talk to Ken about it, because he's given me that line before. Thanks.
Okay. Well, if you find anything out new, just please let me know. I'd be interested too.
Okay, thanks.
I did attend the Natural Hazards Consortium from, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. The Natural Hazards Consortium is coming up. That's what I wanted to tell you, on June 22nd at noon. So I got a ton of information out of that microgrid consortium that they just had. I do have a full report on that in the board packet. There is a Smart Grids and Data Consortium on June 30th. And then, of course, the NREL microgrid R&D and strategy dealio is happening July 26th through the 28th. I think that's all the notes that I have in my notebook to specifically point out. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. How can I help you? Dan.
Yeah, I can maybe make a little comment on the Native Americans. We serve we sold not around 5,000 ton of coal for home heating and cooking this last year. And there's a lot of those people that the government come in and built their housing, put in gas, water, electricity, and moved them in there. And they couldn't afford it, so they moved back to their hogans. So they're using cheap heat and the coal, which is way cheap compared to everything else. So it's a mindset of the people. They moved back to their adobe hogans, and cedar post.
Great. Thank you for that observation, sir. Kirsten?
Yeah, Holly, I want to make a general observation of, seems like every week we get something about some extra thing that you had attended or watched, and I am fascinated by the stuff you send. I am very impressed by your level of effort and dedication to this stuff. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And also in response to that, I am humbly grateful for you guys entertaining and helping me obtain my other objectives of going to that NREL microgrid thing, as well as the Gettysburg. And I will do my dangest to write up a report that provides you value as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Western United.
Kirsten's handoff is complete to me, as the next meeting is in late August. I wanted to thank her specifically for a set of notes that she provided that were called Western United Electric Thoughts, Questions with Answers. That was a great tool for me to get a base on, as opposed to walking into it blindly. It felt like not only a continuance, but something that I could build on. So thank you for that extra effort, Kirsten. I'll go forward with that. And Jessica made a little mention earlier ago about bragging on somebody. And so since I don't have a Western United report to give, since I haven't been to a meeting, I'm going to tie this into fire. The fire management officer over at Southern Ute wanted to pass along, his quote was, "The operational capability impressed me more than anything I have seen in decades." That's in reference to the Bear Dance fire over in Ignacio. You know, we had misinformation process in the middle of that, but when it came down to what was happening on the ground, he said it was the first time in 35 years that he understood how come people were confused why firefighters would walk towards fire. And it's just part of his life and his career. But when the lineman showed up and something was dangling and hanging up there, and he said, "So do we need to evacuate the area?" And the guy said, "Well, no, we're going to go up there and fix it." He goes, "Now I know what people think about firefighters. That's what I thought of that whole crew." And he said it continued on with that. So earlier in the presentation on the dashboard, Jessica was talking about people hiking up hills, and yet in the middle of Ignacio, the same type of thing was happening. So I would pass that on from him as the fire management officer over there. And then the last thing I leave you with is later on this month, I will be working with Jessica on the fire lines and mitigation plan, and then to try to, I guess, put some field fire processes into it. And I would remind everyone that we entered stage 2 burn restrictions today. Our environment, you know, out there, all of our fuels are very dry. And so the extra awareness about LPEA's, you know, tree trimming and all the questions that are coming in with it and the awareness of it and how do we wrap poles to prevent something else from falling are completely, well-founded and well-balanced. It seems like I hope that budget pays dividends for us so that we're the problem solver in that, and we're not contributing to it. And I'd like to specifically thank Jessica. A week ago, I was at a meeting where the state brought in people talking about limits and wildfire in our communities. And this was a statewide effort. It was over at the Park and Rec Center. I went there to represent as the chair of the La Plata Fire Chiefs Association. I went there to address it, a couple county commissioners and other people in there. And there was this question about how come there's only one power line going to Archuleta and what a disaster that could be. And I thought that's not accurate, but they started going down this process with, how are we going to mitigate it? This has to be fixed and we can't be out there hanging by ourselves. And a call to Jessica got the right amount of, 2 lines, the difference in the KV capability. And I was able to address that to that consortium of folks that are starting to be in that planning sequence. And I think we, headed off a potential misinformation campaign. And so many of us have hats in different realms. And I think I am glad to be able to carry some of those LPEA things out there in our community, especially since wildfire is prevalent on so many people's minds, political, neighbors, just people in general. That's my notes.
John, thank you for that. Kudos. It was.
Yeah, it's great to be a part with you guys having answers and the directions that LPEA is going.
We appreciate that. We appreciate
Hear,
you
hear.
helping with the disinformation too.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, thanks, John. All right, Tri-State Rate Design Committee.
Yeah, so there was a meeting in May, was it the day before the reserve issues came out from FERC. So interestingly, the thing about how do we count our transmission resources hadn't been settled yet. And so now we're going to have to do that separately for people who have transmission resources that just go to them. That's going to have to figure out how to get that just to them. That will change the rates. Now, one of the questions that I was asked earlier, and it might have been an executive session, but I don't think it was an executive session question. It was like, are our rates going to go up? The thing about the rate design committee, it's about the design of the rate. It's not necessarily about the amount of the rate. That is almost a byproduct of it. So the design of the rate says how much tilt is involved, how much is a demand charge, how much is going to be an energy only charge, how much do we assign specifically to folks, and how much do we socialize? Just so that you guys know, and I would like your input on this. My philosophy going into this is that you socialize what makes sense to socialize, and you cost allocate for those items that can't be socialized. So for instance, the standalone transmission, it only goes to one little place, that should not be socialized. That's just for a single co-op. The fact that we have that a plant is built and that plant costs so much money, and some people use a little bit of it and some uses a lot, and sometimes their little bit might not be quite as much on a ratio as what they use. That makes sense to be socialized, and that's my philosophy going in. I'm in contact with Jessica and Dan to make sure that I'm meeting what LPEA needs are, and and Dan was at the last rate design committee too, and he was a very popular guy, actually. Everybody wanted to talk to him, and I was able to benefit from a couple of those conversations. So he's well respected. The rate design that we have a comeback rate that's due in September. That means it's probably going to hit the Tri-State Board by June. So there's a lot of work to do between now and then. It may end up being just a rate and not a formulary rate, with the thought that they'll follow on with a formulary rate. Although we at LPA are continuing to push for a formulary rate, it makes it more transparent. It's really easy to see, yes, this is, when this cost goes up, the rate's going to go up, as opposed to okay, this was this kind of little black box thing. We know we have to change it because costs have gone up, but we don't really know why. So it becomes a little bit too non-transparent. So it's that's why I'm continuing to push for, and as such, LPEA is continuing to push for. So if you guys want me to do something different, you have to let me know. This position is different than Kohler's. Kohler has both hats. I'm there to represent LPEA. So if I'm not doing that, you guys need to let me know if you guys have a different philosophy or something on that. And again, I think I'm in lockstep with Jessica and Dan. And if I'm not, they will kick me in the shins. Right? Okay. Next meeting is June 29th. Any questions? Oh, come on. Dan, Dan, you're unmuted. Ask a question.
I was just going to say, the 29th meeting is just virtual.
Ah, thank you. So you can attend easy.
Kirsten, sorry, I'll raise my hand.
Go ahead, Tim.
So the materials that you prep with and then receive at the end of the meeting, can you remind me if those are posted somewhere if we want to go look at them?
Yeah, the May ones, the pre ones are posted. They're going to be under, I don't remember if they're under Tri-State Rate Design Committee or, yeah, they're under Tri-State Rate Design Committee. And this is in the Google Docs or Google folder. And then I have it divided out by month. So I don't have June in there yet. I don't have the preamble for the June. And I might have to still put in the final presentation that the folks did all about tilt into the May one. And it's a fascinating one to take a look at. There were a lot of words wrapped around it, but you should take a look when we look at all the different ways you can build kinds of billing determinants and also who would benefit from what kind of tilt. La Plata ends up in good every single way. It's because we have such a high load factor and I think also because we're winter peakers, I don't know, but there's so many ways that it's kind of hard to not make it good for LPEA. So I'm trying to keeping that in mind of, okay, all of this is good for LPEA. What's going to be best for the most others also? But yes, to answer your question, Tim, that's in there. It's in Google Docs. It's under there, and I'll make sure that it's up to date.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, I am going to go ahead. Did you have an additional comment, Kirsten?
Yeah, I'm assuming our next meeting is going to be either in person or hybrid.
TBD. There was go ahead.
And are we following what LPEA's rules are on that? About
there was an uptick in Jessica, you can jump in here, but there was an uptick in COVID in the building, and well, last Jessica and I talked about it. We were playing it day by day.
Yeah, and actually San Juan Basin Health, I believe, has come out with additional guidance to actually, they're locking things down even more. And if you walk around town, masks are now being required in some areas. 15 employees at a local co-op are down with COVID. So I'm not comfortable risking my staff again for opening it up in July.
Sure. So how we'll know if we have a meeting is we look at San Juan Basin Health and then we follow whatever rules La Plata operational is using. Would that be fair? That's how we'll know?
No, to be clear, it'll show up on your invite as either noted. It'll be show up on your invite as in person or by Zoom. And like I said, we'll make a decision day by day here. And regardless of San Juan, if we have an outsized population in the building with serious COVID challenges, whether those are actual cases or what have you, then we're going to make a game day decision.
Based upon the operational decision that Jessica makes for the building, right? So if she's closing down the building, obviously we can't be there.
No.
What I'm pushing at is, I don't know, this could be a board decision. I want it to be a board decision.
I understand what you're pushing at. And my understanding is what I just told you, which is right now, Jessica's standing decision is that she's not comfortable putting people in the same room in that way, so long as there's 15 people in the building that have cases of COVID.
Okay.
And I think we need to respect that decision unconditionally.
Okay.
Okay.
And next month, if there's not 15 and she
We'll
hasn't,
cross that bridge next month.
so it's Jessica's decision, which is fine. It's her building. Is it Jessica's decision?
Go ahead.
I was just going to clarify, there's not 15 people that are sick in my co-op. I'm just saying that's a local co-op that's having an outbreak next to us. We have had cases. I think just from my perspective, Kirsten, if you're just wondering, you got to remember that my LT would be in the room and they deal with dispatch and the crews. And so I have an obligation to keep the lights on. And so I would say that I would hope that you respect my decision to keep my staff safe and the lights on. And so if I say I don't feel comfortable hosting a public meeting, it's more about the public meeting in the offices due to this COVID. Just from my personal perspective, I'm just hoping that that's respected and we do that.
Super. And Jessica, I hope you are hearing me say, if it's your decision, I will live by your decision.
I am.
If it's somebody else's decision of we're not doing this, then I want to have the board say in it. Okay, thank you. I whatever to your decision. I bow to your decision on that.
You muted, John.
Joe, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think didn't we talk about having a cow meeting in July?
Yes. Where did that land?
So
it did come up.
We've delayed that. I would say the next cow that we're going to schedule is around the budget. And so we're going to work with Sue on the FAQ to determine the timing of that. And so that won't be in July though.
That's right. Right. So I think, but to sort of recognize, yes, Joe, it was batted around. And I think we need to back that up and get the timing and get the agenda just right. So Holly.
Quick reminder, lunch and learn on July 13th with Dominic May.
Thank you. Okay, last call. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.